Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is May 25th, 2023. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham ZBA is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the conference ID number, which is 774-946-179, and then please hit the pound sign. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this hybrid form of meeting, we need a roll call of all members of the zoning board. Please state your name and whether you agree or not. Buck?
James M. Upson, and I approve of the format.
Lee Hovey, I approve.
Paul C. Semple, I approve.
Randy Potash, I approve.
Ginny Holden, I approve.
And David H. Feach, I approve.
And David S. Nixon, I approve. I would ask that any citizens or non-board members participating in the call via the phone, please give us your name and the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. The way our meeting is conducted is as follows. The hearing notice will be read by the lady to my right. This is Sarah B. Clark. She is the PPO for the town. That's the principal permitting officer. After that, the representative of the applicant or the applicant will have a presentation. When that is concluded, I would ask for anybody, either here in this audience or on Microsoft Teams, who wishes to speak in favor to indicate they would like to join the meeting, and we would give them an opportunity to speak. When that's done, I would read any and all correspondence that we had received from no matter what, plus, no, minus, in between, doesn't make a difference. When I'm done with that, I would ask for anybody either here or on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak against or has a specific question. If they wish to join the meeting, they would raise their hand and we would recognize them and allow them to join the meeting. When that's concluded, there might be some rebuttal. Then we would have questions from the board. When we were done with that, we would close the public hearing and go into deliberation. Deliberation is strictly amongst the board members unless a board member interjects into the conversation, someone who might have added to the conversation and the above. When we were done with that, we would take a vote. Votes in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to be successful, you must get a supermajority. In our case, there are 5 votes. So you need to get 4 in the affirmative to be successful. 3, even though that's a simple majority, is not successful. Are there any questions? Voting today, I should add, Dave Each, Randy, myself, Paul, and Buck. Okay, before you start reading, Sarah, I will tell you that the first 3 have to do with 90 Bridge Street, and I'm going to have Sarah read all 3 at once, and that the presenter, Mr. Keon here in the front, will give us a presentation that will encompass all 3. Yes, Buck.
Do we have any minutes that we want to approve or don't want to today? We're too busy.
We could do that later on. Anyway, we're too busy. So I presume that's fine with you, Ted, that we do that. That simplifies things. And our conversation, then we would have questions for you on all 3. Then when it came to deliberation, Paul would have to individually pick them out, and we would deliberate and vote separately.
Sounds fine.
Okay? So, Sarah, 23-044, 045, and 046, please.
Application number 23-044, Town of Chatham, care of Theodore Keon, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633, owner of property located at 90 Bridge Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14A, Block 2, Lot 11. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance under Section 8D2C from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the placement of a new upweller facility, which exceeds the allowable building height and encroaches on the required road setback. The proposed upweller facility will be 26 feet tall, where 20 feet is the maximum allowed, and will be located 25.5 feet from the road, where a 40-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. Application number 23-045. Town of Chatham, care of Theodore Keon, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 90 Bridge Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map, 14A, Block 2, Lot 11. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance under Section 8D2C from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the construction of an accessory structure, bathroom and storage, within the road setback. The proposed accessory structure will be 5 feet from the road, where a 40-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. Application number 23-046. Town of Chatham, care of Theodore Keon, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 90 Bridge Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14A, Block 2, Lot 11. The applicant seeks a special permit to remove the existing accessory structure and construct a new accessory structure, bathroom and storage. The existing structure is non-conforming and it is located 2 feet from the road and entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 13. The proposed structure will be non-conforming, and that it will be located 5 feet from the road, where a 40-foot setback is required, and will remain entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. Also proposed is the construction of a new commercial municipal pier/float system and the extension of the existing pier and the addition of a float system. The lot contains 7,200 square feet in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D2B of the Protective Bylaw.
Ted? And I must say that in this one case, the speaker is going to be speaking from this spot. Usually everybody is up there, but that's not the situation. Ted?
Thank you very much. For the record, Ted Keon, Coast Resource Director with the Town of Chatham. Sarah just reviewed, obviously, the various requests before you, both variances and special permits for what we consider a very, very important town, municipal, and public project. A bit of a background history of this site and how we got to where we are. Back in 2014, the town purchased this very small postage stamp, in many ways, waterfront property adjacent to the Mitchell River Bridge on Mitchell River in Stage Harbor because it was available. It was privately owned, and the town has basically a standing kind of goal/policy to look at any opportunity to provide expanded water access for the community, the public, municipal needs when possible. We had our eyes on this site for a number of years, but then the private owners ultimately decided they didn't really or couldn't do what they might want to do, so they offered it to the town and we purchased it. When we purchased, our immediate change, if you will, was we reconfigured or reconstructed, rather, the existing timber pier that already had a license associated with it to immediately try to improve some public access opportunities. One of the overarching goals when we purchased it, and as it was presented to town meeting, was again the value of providing more waterfront access when possible. And in this case, we had early on a very specific goal. Obviously, water access in a general sense, whenever, because it's very important in town of Chatham. But we also had a strong desire to, and we've been looking for years, even prior to this, for a site to relocate the town's shellfish propagation upwelling system. It's a very, very important part of our propagation program throughout the town. We have the current upweller that was shoehorned into the ground floor at the Old Mill Boatyard, the Harbor Master Building, back in '98. It's functioned admirably for what it is. It is well past its prime. It would basically need to be essentially reconstructed in total just to kind of keep it as is. But importantly, there was no opportunity for any type of expansion at that location. And another issue that has been an issue almost since day one when it was constructed was that that facility, by design, is required to have saltwater, seawater intake pumps to run the upwelling system. And those pumps are directly adjacent, frankly, underneath the most heavily utilized pier in Stage Harbor at Old Mill Boatyard, with all kinds of vessel traffic and those types of activities that occur next to it. Errant lines get sucked into the pumps rather, fueling, cleaning of vessels and so forth, and all of that is not a good thing for the upweller system. And then directly adjacent to that site, the town reconstructed the trap dock just recently, which is now the, quote, premier offloading commercial dock in Stage Harbor. And now the commercial activity has increased with additional fueling and so forth. So it has always been a goal, let's find a better site. And we had lots and lots of trouble finding one. When this site became available, it was almost a perfect location in many ways. We just had to figure out, how to design the site to, make it appropriate. So after we purchased it and did the initial change to the existing pier or rebuild of the existing pier, we embarked on a multi-year and multi-committee coordination to try to find the best optimal use for this site. Ultimately, after many iterations, what you see before us on the site plan is what was the ultimate recommendation. There is a lot going on here, all very, I think, well done and real well concept out as far as what the goal was. We have put a bulkhead around the perimeter of it because the existing stone has no foundation. It's just sitting on the seabed, if you will, and it has no structural, component to it. So we have to put a bulkhead around it in order to stabilize that upland. We have then on, I always get the directions here. I guess that's the sort of the south side or southwest side. We have done a modest expansion to the elevated timber pier, expanding it out, basically the same footprint it is, about 10 feet further out, with a new gangway and float system for commercial use to some extent, recreational use, loading, unloading gear, et cetera. Designed specifically to make sure that we have vessel, capabilities to, get in and out and clearances and so forth. We have removed the unusable, frankly, existing stone ramp, filled that in. We've expanded parking as best we can in this very small site. And then on the eastern end is really where, the major, changes are proposed. We have on the upland portion, within more or less the same footprint of the existing shed that's been there for many, many years, the new restroom / small storage room. Again, as Sarah had mentioned, setback, we are still within, or not within appropriate, setback distances, but we are a few feet further than the current one, and it's actually a smaller footprint than the existing structure. The most substantial, obviously, component to it is the new pile-supported pier that extends out in this orientation. And that is to house the new shellfish upwelling facility. An upweller has to be near the water. We went through many iterations, whether it should be on land, it really didn't fit. Partially on land, partially on water. Again, after numerous versions, this was the preferred layout for that system. So it is a pile-supported pier. The midsection where the building would sit is actually a concrete foundation to the pier. And around it is a deck system that would be open to the public. On either side are gangways and floats. Very noteworthy, on the northeast side, you notice that this gangway is particularly long. Again, completely by design, because this will be the first opportunity the town has to make a truly ADA compliant gangway to a public float system, because we have lots of gangways in town, but none of them meet the code requirements for slope for ADA accessibility. I didn't mention that, where'd it go? Oh, around the perimeter of the site, as well as having an ADA parking space, this is an ADA accessible pathway as well. So you will have ADA access around the perimeter, ADA access to the restroom area, and then onto the deck and float system. So that was a goal from the outset for this structure, for this whole project. On the outside, additional float systems are being proposed. These are going to be seasonal. They will be open to the public. For the most part, we will have some municipal shellfish-related kind of dedicated berthing spaces on this end. The rest of it will be all open to the public. What makes these floats unique is that they are dual-purposed, if you will, for float use, as you would at any of our town landings, but they also have the capability for shellfish propagation, that they will actually have hatches in them. Within the float system will be another component to our upwelling system where seed shellfish can grow to an even larger stage while in the water and under our control. These types of systems are relatively common in propagation areas. We've had one sort of, I don't want to say it's a test area, but we had one single float sitting out in the harbor to try to get our feet wet using the system. This will be a much more intensive and an expansion to our program. And then again, the key component will be the upwelling building itself. Situated, midsection of the pier. When this project was started, we were designing a purpose-built upwelling building. We had, I think, what was at the time a nice design, and then we had a very kind of desirable situation kind of get dumped in our laps, if you will. The opportunity arose where the Stage Harbor Coast Guard boathouse that used to be sitting across the way on Morris Island became available. We fought to sort of try to keep it and find a home for it back when it was made available to the town, a number of years ago. Well, actually, a number of years ago, it was offered to the town for $1, and we refused because we didn't really have a use for it. And then, a little over a decade ago, it became available again. Once more, we really couldn't find an appropriate use or space. So it left town, went to Quincy, then it moved to Hull for private use that ultimately never went anywhere. And then it was slated to be demolished, and that's when we had a very good situation where local folks, private folks came and saved the building, and it is now under private ownership. And the select board has approved the donation of bring this building back to Chatham and, place it again back in Stage Harbor as a historic boathouse and back to its original home. So the coincidence, in a very good way, was that the footprint of this building was almost identical to the footprint of what we had already proposed. I mean, literally within almost inches, it was the same size. So the footprint was perfect. It is a taller building. Obviously, that's one of the issues that we are wrestling with. But in a sense, it is what it is. This is the Coast Guard boathouse that has been on Chatham for many years until it, left. I guess that's enough for the general history. It's a very, very, again, important project for the town. Lots of support, as I'm sure you'll see shortly. And we're anxious to, get this project going. We are hoping that we get a grant that has been applied for that would make the project move forward, ideally beginning next fall, winter, and then perhaps have the boathouse come back the following fall and winter, once we get the basic, waterfront structures in place. Then we would bring the boathouse back and essentially plop it down on site. So with that intro, I'll review the various variance issues that are before us. First one related to, and again, as requests, I'm going to kind of lump both projects in, in basically the same discussion. The first variance is related to the site characteristics. Obviously, this site is unique. It's quite small. Trying to meet the setback requirements on the upland is essentially impossible. You can't. The upweller was located in its current configuration, again, after many, many, options. To put it so that it would be the required 40 feet is essentially a non-starter. It would stick it out into the harbor. It would put it out into the navigation channel, and it just, we could not do that. It would not work. Likewise with the restroom. Neither structure would be able to meet that 40-foot and maintain appropriate navigation access in Mitchell River. So that truly was a non-starter. Relative to the restroom, I did reference that we are keeping it in the same footprint, more or less, as the existing structure that's been there 80, I think, years. It's an old seaside shanty shed. We are removing it and going to be repurposing that building. We haven't come up with a site. We have been through the HBDC, and they are fully supportive of that shed being relocated, and the new restroom coming in, essentially having the same appearance as a small, quaint seaside type shed-looking building. So once again, the site itself basically makes meeting that setback distance, impossible. The second group of characteristics is really related to the hardship if we weren't able to do it. As I just indicated, full compliance is not feasible. So in essence, we would not be able to provide those components to the overall project. And that would be a severe, impact to the overall goals of what we were trying to achieve by providing a new upwelling system for the benefit of the community, as well as a restroom facility, which is very much desired along this area. This is a very heavily utilized loop, as we all know. It's one of the most popular walking areas in Chatham to do, quote, the loop. The Mitchell River Bridge, particularly during the season, is heavily utilized by the public. And then ultimately, once we have these other amenities, it's going to be very popular for them as well. We have in the past used a porta-john at this location. We all know the issues with using porta-johns and not the preferred. So again, if we were not able to meet the full compliance, at this site, so we would not have to be able to, put these structures in place. Indicating again, the support we've had from this has been very, very, well-rounded. We've had all the committees that were working on this project for a year are in full support. The select board has endorsed this project as designed, basically. As I just indicated, HBDC, even though they were really focusing on the restroom, we reviewed with them the entire project. They were very supportive of the entire project as proposed. Town meeting actually has also supported this, with the concept of the initial purchase to have mixed uses. But they've also supported 2 CPA articles related to bringing the upweller or bringing back the boathouse to be used as the upweller to bring it back to Chatham. That was approved for the private owners of the facility. And then they also approved a town request for exterior renovations to sort of begin bringing this structure back to its original livery as it was. It does need some obvious improvements to the exterior as part of this project. So again, it just goes to show that there has been support for this project and to bring it back and utilize it in this fashion. I've indicated again that the upweller is important to our shellfish propagation program. It really is the critical component to expand our production of seed shellfish throughout the town. Without it, our program, well, we'd presumably have to stay in our own site as is, which I said is already deficient. We'd have to completely renovate it, and there would be no ability for expansion. One of the other goals of having this facility is to reduce the town's resource input, and by that I mean staffing and oversight, because we will be able to grow the shellfish in this new upwelling facility to a larger stage. Ultimately, the goal, if at all possible, is to actually grow it to the point where the seed shellfish would get to the size that we could actually start to distribute out into the wild right from the upwelling portion of their growth. Otherwise, which we still will probably have to do to some extent, I don't think we're going to get rid of it. But as of now, once they get to as much as they've grown over the course of the season, we take them out of the upweller and then we go put them out into the wild under nets and leave them there for a couple years to naturally grow. And then we go back out with a lot of labor, dig them all up, and then we distribute throughout the waterways. So having a much more efficient, larger capacity with these other amenities like the flupsies will allow us to grow the shellfish to a larger scale and hopefully, to some extent, maybe have direct distribution into the water. So again, all of my points here is this facility is very important to the town, and compliance to the zoning regulations as they are, the bylaws, would preclude our ability to put it where we want, right here. I referenced the restroom as a major improvement, and I'll move on to the next section, which is, let me just reread it, that if granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or derogating from the intent. Actually, it's my point or intent to show that this is actually no derogation, but actually improvement to some of the key components to the criteria, or rather the purpose and intent of the bylaw. For example, one of the key items is to provide public access to waterways. Obviously, this is a very focused project for that very specific purpose. Other public service requirements, we will be providing some educational components to the public. The public currently does visit through focused educational programs with our current upwelling system. We are definitely not set up for the public to walk through the current one. We are not proposing to have public walk through this one, but we will be providing educational programs associated with the program once this is up and running. So this will be a much better facility for public education, both on the shellfish resources, upwelling in general. Having the historic boathouse will have its own kind of component to education. So I think we are actually, adding to the purpose and intent of the bylaw in that sense. Reading my scribble here. Sewage is one of the other issues. The restroom that we are proposing obviously is an improvement over the current practice of having a porta-john. But one of the other things that this will provide is tapping into our existing sewer system. We had originally proposed to have a restroom here. It was, at the time, considered to be likely a composting system because there was no sewer line within the area. That changed. We ultimately put the sewer line down Bridge Street, knowing that it needed it at some point, and that this project was in the works, and it was like, well, why don't we just do it now? We need to do it, let's put it in, and now our restroom would tap right into the sewer system. So we'd actually be improving sewerage in this location by providing this restroom and so forth. The natural resources, protection of natural resources, beaches, dunes, et cetera. The upwelling program, the propagation program, by design, is going to enhance our shellfish resources. A good, healthy shellfish resource is incredibly important to Chatham, both from a recreational and commercial harvest perspective, but is also very, very good for the environment. Having a healthy benthic community, of which shellfish is a big component, is important. Shellfish are filter feeders. That in of itself improves water quality. So we're not going to say, because we've argued against, just using shellfish to solve water quality issues, that's not going to happen, but shellfish does improve water quality. So that will be an absolute side benefit to expanding our shellfish resource through the town, and this is going to help do that. The category preservation of citizens through customary means of earning a living, we're going to help that. We are going to continue to expand on our shellfish resources, which is a commercial product. It's primarily quahogs that are coming out of this facility, as well as some other species, quahogs being the primary one, both what we produce and which is harvested, locally as well. So we will be providing, an opportunity to maintain and hopefully expand some of our customary sources of income for those folks that like to go out and harvest shellfish commercially. And then the last category, sort of in the purpose of intent categories, is preservation, future habits of Chatham, natural, architectural, and historic assets. Once again, bringing back the historic boathouse, I think, satisfies that very, very well. It's going to add to our, waterfront, working waterfront ambiance to the area. Maintaining this historical structure, I think, is very important. Relative to the variance requirements of the height, the only way that that building would be made in compliance is to basically cut the bottom out. And I think that's at odds with what the goal is here. That would not work. So in order to maintain the structure as it is in its original configuration, we would have to meet that 26 or maintain that 26 height as it currently sits. So with that, move into the special permit
Please.
areas.
Yep.
Moving into the various special permit criteria, once again, we're now expanded not to just the two structures of the restroom and the upweller facility, but more to all the waterfront-related features, i.e. the floats, the piers, all of which are very important to this overall site. They're water-dependent. Relative to the specific criteria, adequacy of the site, it's a small site, we get that. It is very conducive, once we've designed it as we are, to the float system. So I think what we propose is very appropriate for the location. And again, with the goal of maintaining water access, we have to have water access. And to get there, we have provided the floats and the piers in order to provide that, each with its own somewhat specific purpose. Suitability of site, I think, is almost the same topic. Waterfront, very good water exposure for what we're trying to do with the upweller, with the flow of water, and it provides access to Stage Harbor and then Nantucket Sound, et cetera, which is, very, very good. Traffic flow and safety. We do expect that there will be increased use of the site. I think that's a given. We have expanded the parking within the site as best we can, providing the bulkhead does provide additional maneuverability in the small footprint that we're working with. If you've been here during the summer season, area is already very, very popular. So we don't see, in essence, a major change to what is already an important and popular place to go for, the bridge. We have a marina next door. So I don't see a major change in that. We will be dedicating certain spaces to the municipal use for the shellfish department, primarily to access and maintain the upwelling system, and then the rest will be, open for the public. Neighborhood visual character. Our goal all along was to develop something that would fit in with the waterfront, working waterfront facilities throughout Chatham, throughout the nation, frankly, throughout everywhere, are becoming harder and harder to come by as private property is taking over a lot of these locations. So maintaining this as a working waterfront in an area that has always been a portion of working waterfront in many ways, I think is very much in keeping. Bringing back the boathouse, trying to create that, scenic ambiance of having these types of structures along the coast or along the shoreline is important. This area has always had shanties and so forth along the edge. Admittedly, obviously, the boathouse is larger, but it still is in keeping. It's the nautical look, and it used to be along the coast, albeit on the other side of the harbor. Sewage disposal, as indicated, we should be improving that over current practice, which is just a porta-john, which does blow over occasionally, which is not a good thing. Tying into the sewer and providing that restroom capability in an area that has heavy public use, I think, is a very good benefit to the overall project. Utilities and other public services, we have sufficient power, natural gas access along this street. We will be providing a generator in the building in the second floor that will be gas-powered, natural gas-powered. All those utilities are on site, and everything is adequate. That's completely a non-issue as far as what we have in the location. Noise and litter, it will become a busy site. It is a busy site. We will providing all the appropriate refuse containers as needed. Town will be disposing those again as needed. So I don't see that really as an issue or a change. Compatibility with the surrounding land uses, again, water dependent. Water access, floats, we have a marina right next door. We have the town landing, not far around from the corner, fully compatible with the types of use of this location. So we don't see that as an impact whatsoever. Impact on the natural environment, et cetera. As I think this was or has already been through the Conservation Commission, so they've conditioned it appropriately to ensure that there are no negative impacts. As I already indicated, we think that this will provide a very positive benefit to the overall shellfish resources. We will be expanding production. As Renee our shellfish constable, has indicated, always, almost, when you have operations like that, you kind of lose shellfish in the system, so you will get natural colonization just in the local area. Even though we're not necessarily putting them there, they're going to end up there. So we will see an enhancement in all likelihood to shellfish just because the facility is running. Impact on neighborhood relative to employment business, that's a non-issue for this proposal. I think I've run through them.
Very good. Thank you very much. I now ask for anyone who is here who wishes to speak in favor of this application to indicate you'd like to speak, or on Microsoft Teams, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting. So I'll start with folks here. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor? Okay, in Microsoft Teams?
Mr. Messina would like to speak?
Okay, Frank?
Thank you very much. I guess I'm wearing the Chatham Historical Commission hat on, and I did send a piece of correspondence, and I apologize for the lateness of it, but hopefully you have it, and you will read at least the cover letter to it. The Historical Commission was delighted that the Coast Guard boathouse is making its way back. The Historical Commission has been working for many years in supporting of Dave Doherty and Stu Smith and other people in the boating community who have tried to find a home for it. It's got to be at least 10 or 15 years we've been doing that. The boathouse is unique in many ways, and not too many of them in the Northeast, specifically in Cape Cod. And of course, I showed you one in Cuttyhunk. There's one on Brant Point on Nantucket, and also used as upwellers. This is a very sturdy structure and a lot of history, not only for the day-to-day operation and water rescue, but back to, we all know, to the maritime history of Stage Harbor. So we're delighted that hopefully the town of Chatham will be able to finally return this boathouse, which is, if you got miles for moving, it's had a lot of miles on it, but it's still very sturdy and great condition. And we hope the zoning board can find a way to facilitate, to allow the boathouse to be saved and back into Chatham, which we hope then to submit to Mass Historic for an historical designation as a National Register place. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Frank. Sarah, was there anybody else that you saw on Microsoft Teams?
I see no one else to speak in favor.
Okay, then I'll read the correspondence. First, this is an email. This is from Stuart Smith. He's the harbor master for the town of Chatham. He writes on May 25th. Please consider this my response to the multi-purpose 90 Bridge Street project in accordance with the local zoning bylaw. My comments address navigation, stationing of vessels in a harbor, maritime public safety, and the public's access to the Commonwealth's waters. From a navigation perspective, this project, coupled with the associated dredging, will enhance vehicle access to this valuable public property. While the proposed upweller building does protrude out into the harbor, it should not significantly impact a vessel's approach or a departing vessel's ability to navigate this area or the drawbridge. As I have stated before to a number of committees, at least 4 moorings in this area will be impacted by the upwelder building and relocated to approved locations. Maritime public safety will be improved with the removal of the rock revetment and replaced with a standard bulkhead. The plan appears to be well laid out from a land perspective and approves clearly delineated parking and entrance/exiting onto Bridge Street. This project improves public access to the water by providing additional tie-up for both commercial and recreational boats, supporting their unloading and loading of the equipment, product, and passengers. The state-approved harbor plan supports and encourages both existing public access and additional public access. As we all know, and disappointingly, the town's existing infrastructure for public access is extremely limited as opposed to other communities in Massachusetts. As a side note, it is likely that the Select Board will prohibit fueling at this location during the operational months of the upweller. With the completion of this project, public access will be improved, the shellfish upweller program will be enhanced and improved, a historic building will be reintroduced to Chatham and preserved, and public reception by the Harbor Master's Office can be reestablished on the first floor of the currently occupied upweller, which will allow us to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Thank you for your time and consideration. Now, a note, this is from Judith Georgia. She's the health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on 5/23, I have reviewed the plan to construct the new upweller facility and public restrooms. The plan calls for the municipal sewer to be connected to the property. This is an acceptable plan. I have no public health concerns with the building height or the road setback. This is a memorandum. This is from the town of Chatham Shellfish Advisory Committee. This is dated May 10th. We, the members of the Chatham Shellfish Advisory Committee, request approval of all variances, permits, and special permits required for the timely completion of this important community project, which will benefit the recreational, cultural, and economic well-being of the town of Chatham. Respectfully submitted, Robert J. Davis, Chairman. Now we have a memorandum from Renee Gagné. She writes on May 16th. Renee is the Shellfish Constable for the town of Chatham. The Shellfish Division staff has participated in development of the 90 Bridge project from its initial concept through the design phase and continues to strongly support the final construction phase of the project. The project includes a new upwelling facility to be built over the water on pilings and housed within the historic U.S. Coast Guard Stage Harbor Boathouse. An upweller is a propagation tool that allows the town to purchase small seed for the least amount of money, thereby getting a greater return. The primary mission of the town's propagation program is to create, support, and maintain a sustainable shell fishery that provides income to local families and a healthy recreational activity that provides an opportunity for the public to learn and appreciate Chatham's unique coastal environment. The Shellfish Division staff strongly supports granting the issuance of special permits and variances relevant to proceed to the construction phase of this project. The construction of an accessory structure, that is the bathroom and storage, will benefit the public and will be crucial in supporting the staff. The floating dock system will also incorporate additional grow-out space for seed shellfish and is critical to meet the proposed increased seed production capacity. Utilizing the U.S. Coast Guard Stage Harbor Boathouse is needed to house the upwelling facility and will add an historic and educational element to this waterfront multi-purpose use improvement project. Thank you for your consideration. Then we have a letter. This is from the South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee, Town of Chatham. It's from Tom King, the chairman, on May 16th. The South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee is tasked with implementation of the state-approved South Coastal Harbor Management Plan, which includes the waterways and embayments of the Stage Harbor Complex and other water bodies along the south side of Chatham. The plan places a strong emphasis, among others, on the natural resources preservation and enhancement, when possible, of Chatham's shell fishery, commercial and recreational public water access, and commercial fishing. The plan specifically recommends efforts to expand production of shellfish seed and questions the adequacy of the existing facility to meet the town's long-term goals. As such, the committee strongly supports the improvements sought at the waterfront parcel at 90 Bridge. The committee participated, along with other town advisory committees, in an exhaustive multi-year scoping of the highest and best use of the waterfront property at 90 Bridge. This parcel was purchased by the town in 2014 with an overarching goal to provide for a new shellfish upwelling facility and to improve public water access. The current proposal fully addresses these goals. The committee further believes that the project will result in significant benefits provided by enhancements to shellfish resources from a new upgraded upwelling facility, in addition to enhanced public water access and opportunity for public education of Chatham's shellfish and marine resources. SCHPC strongly supports granting the required variances for use of the historic U.S. Coast Guard Stage Harbor Boathouse as the new upwelling building. The committee further recommends granting the variance for the accessory restroom/storage building, as well as the special permits for the piers and floats necessary to complete the site redevelopment. Then we have a note from the Waterways Advisory Committee from the town of Chatham on May 16th. This is from Dick Hosmer, who's the chairman. The Waterways Advisory Committee was deeply involved with planning for the redevelopment of the waterfront parcel at 90 Bridge. The WAC participated in many joint scoping and coordination meetings with other town committees to develop a comprehensive plan for the best public and municipal use of the property. A key priority for the site was relocating and upgrading of the town's existing shellfish upwelling facility. Other goals were to improve recreational and commercial boating opportunities, including establishment of ADA-compliant boat access. The WAC considers the improvements sought for the site addresses these goals and strongly supports the project. The project includes many site improvements to the benefit of the town. The new upwelling facility will be an improvement over the existing facility, which has limitations for expansion, is in a congested area with conflicting maritime activities. The public will be able to view the upweller operations and the harbor from the surrounding pier, which will provide opportunities for public access, education, and awareness of this important resource. The new floats and expanded adjacent pier will improve boating access for both recreational and commercial marinas. The project includes a public restroom that is sorely needed given its location on a very popular biking and walking route and is adjacent to the Mitchell River Bridge, which is a popular structure for family fishing. The WAC supports granting the variances to enable the former U.S. Coast Guard Station boathouse as the new upweller. The restroom and storage building is an important feature to the site, and the setback variance should also be granted. The piers and floats associated with the overall project will improve public water access, and the WAC supports granting the special permits for these structures. Maybe next one. Yeah, thank you. No, I'm down to the short ones. Yeah, that's why you volunteered. Thank you, though, Randy. On May 9th, the Conservation Commission wrote to us. This is from Crystal Keon. The Conservation Commission held a public hearing on April 6, 2022. The proposed project was issued an order of conditions. The project proposed has been conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act, the Town of Local Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 272, and regulations promulgated thereunder. Then we have a quick note from Frank Messina, Chairman of the Chatham Historical. You just heard Frank talk. He essentially says the Chatham Historical Commission has found the USCG boathouse, when it was on stage, had been moved to Quincy, Mass. To be historically significant in accordance with our criteria set forth in our Historical Commission bylaw. In addition, the commission was planning before the boathouse was saved and moved to Quincy to apply to Mass Historic on its eligibility for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We hope, if it is returned, that we will be able to do just that. Thank you. And Frank sent a whole bunch of stuff for us, which we have all reviewed. And I think that's it, Sarah. I do not see anything else.
I don't see the certificate of appropriateness from the HBDC, but as Ted had stated, they did appear before the Historic Business District Commission and were approved without any conditions.
Okay.
And I have a copy of that sitting on my desk. I just saw that. So it has been issued.
Good, thank you. Okay, at this time, I would ask for anybody either here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against this or has a specific question to so indicate that they would like to speak. I do not see any hands here. Is there anyone on Microsoft Teams, Sarah?
I see no one on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in opposition or has a question.
Okay, then we will go to questions from the board. We'll start with Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ted, in reviewing the facts published in the town's annual town reports, it appears that since 2014, when the land was purchased, that commercial permits that were running about 320 permits, senior and regular, per year, has dropped every single year and is now down to less than 75%. I think she's running about 240 would be our current numbers. And in the town report of 2021 or 22, our Director of Natural Resources expressed concern for future reductions in the request for permits. So my question is, are you expecting the number of commercial clammers for quahogs to go up in the future, stay the same, or continue to slide based on Dr. Duncanson's comments?
I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer that, but I understand the trend that you're referring to. I think the trend is much more indicative of other social factors. Housing, I think we all are very familiar with what's happening. I am not trying to propose or suggest that our upwelling is going to bring back, 100 shell fishermen just because we have this upwelling system. We absolutely are trying to sustain the resource and maintain a viable, commercially harvestable shell fishery. So I think the program will enhance our shell fishery. I think that's a given, and try to at least maintain as best we can those that want to go shell fishing commercially. We do have a very large recreational component to the shellfish, harvesting, if you will. I don't know the trend of those numbers, if they've been going up or down, but that's still a very important component to maintaining the shell fishery. So again, Buck, I'm not sure I can, give you any more insight that, we're going to see the numbers as they used to be. The quahog fishery is only one component to the shell fishery in Chatham. As you may know, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the soft shell clam harvests were just going gangbusters. It was almost, every day folks were coming in from the Monomoy Flats and so forth with, bushels of soft shells. So there are other components to, maintaining a commercial, class of shell fishermen, not just the quahog fishery.
Thank you. A couple more. In 2017, the upwelling station ordered 3 million quahog seeds from various sources. And what I'm wondering is why hasn't the upweller been purchasing 3 million? If you're looking for increased expansion, and I think that was one of the benefits of this new project, why haven't you been ordering 3 million seeds every year instead of the 2.2, 2.5?
Again, I don't know that I can answer that. Shellfish seed is, not always readily available from the various, nurseries that we have, options to purchase it from. I'm trying to think of why we may have reduced. I don't know if it was related to what we feel we could, at the time appropriately manage within our existing system with the staffing and the capabilities of our system. So Buck, honestly, I don't know how to refine that any further. That would, again, be a more targeted question for our shellfish constable.
Going back to 2014, I think your comment was when land was being purchased. For several years before that, a number of people have been looking for prospective sites for a new station for expansion. So my question is, what other public lands on Interstage Harbor was considered?
Well, you just kind of hit the problem. There were very few public available spaces to put an upweller. We looked at the dike area. That really didn't seem viable. There was really no infrastructure to work from, ironically, and we thought we had a potential opportunity. We actually looked at the boathouse prior to its leaving Morris Island. When the owner at that time kind of suggested it might be available, the town quickly, looked at that and said, well, the building's perfect. The site is very good. but it was, became a non-starter because of its location in the private area and the power requirements. That we would have had to run three-phase power all the way along the cause. I mean, it was a big deal. And then it ultimately, the option of, a town purchasing it kind of went away. It was no longer an option for the town. We looked at, again, as far as public sites, there really weren't any in the Stage Harbor complex, which is really where we wanted to keep the system. We looked at some private lands. We approached some, adjacent parcels, property owners. They were not interested to, offer up their lands for this type of facility. We even looked over on the north side, Riders Cove. Could we utilize the Marconi facilities? It wasn't really the water body that we wanted to work with, and the logistics of pumping water up into our Marconi site were, again, a non-starter. So it really would have had to have been a purchase of a private property, which were few and far between until this opportunity came.
So are you familiar with the term or road, Stage Harbor Point off Morris Island Road? The town has it listed as over 2 acres and assessed at $3.8 million. Was that thrown out for any reason, or wasn't looked at in any depth?
I don't recall that site being identified. We would have had to, again, bring in, substantial utility systems to that location. There was no infrastructure to work from, no upland. In a sense, it would have had a lot of environmental conservation type issues to put in the infrastructure, the parking, the access, to make that a viable site. I am familiar with that location. We did improve sort of the pathway for public use for the dinghy storage, to access boats over there. But no, I don't believe that there was any real focused, thoughts of using that because of all the complications of putting a, relatively substantial, structure in a natural environment as it is.
But obviously, it would meet the setback to the street.
It would meet the setback, you are correct.
Thank you. And one last question. In your opinion, how would you assess the upkeep and maintenance of the current equipment at the present Upweller station over the last 8 years?
I'd say it's, given the challenges of working with a facility that was frankly built by hand by our previous, actually now technically 2 previous propagation specialists at the time, who built the tanks, built the silos, put all the piping under the building. We did make some modifications when we did the new bulkhead system along Old Mill to improve the water flow in and out to an extent, and relocating the pumps onto the new floats. It's a system that has lots of holes in it, if you will, literally. I mean, we are Band-Aiding the tanks every year. There's been settlement in that building. The tanks flex and crack. They are completely, essentially waterlogged now, even though they function. They don't, they should be replaced. I think we have done a very, very good job of maintaining that system as best we can with the resources we have. But once again, there was no capability for any expansion and enhancement to that system. So it is what it is. It's sort of maxed out in the design, to fit into that building as it is.
Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Lee?
So, thank you for your presentation. It was excellent. Will that old upwelling system be dismantled, and what will happen to that building?
Yes, short answer. As the harbor master referenced, it is very likely that the system would be removed. It's really not compatible with the new system. The tanks, aren't ready for prime time. There may be some components that we could reuse, but in essence, it would be, quote, gutted. The interior space would be improved, made more people-friendly, and likely we would be making that a public space or a public greeting area for folks visiting the harbor master's office, because right now they go up the stairs, or if they're not able, they have to ring, and then we come down and address the public need, given the ADA, lack of access. So it would presumably become a space for office space and public use, or public, greeting and so forth.
And just one more. Maybe you said this, but is the new upwelling system going to run 12 months a year? That's a full, oh, okay.
No, just like the current one, we don't run the system in the off-winter season. It basically starts up around now and runs through November typically. Then the water gets too cold, things are just, they don't grow well in the wintertime, and then, we shut down and then restart, in the, summer-ish season, summer, fall season.
Paul?
Thank you for your presentation, Ted. It's been very informative. I have two questions. One is, I've read that in the 1944 hurricane, there was a storm surge that came into Stage Harbor, which I think was substantial, maybe 10 feet or more. Is this designed to deal with that kind of a situation?
Paul, that's an excellent question I did not touch on. Yes, to the extent that we're able. We are unable, given the geometry of the topography of the site, to really build the structure above the floodplain. We are in the floodplain, and we knew that from the get-go. Basically, all of Stage Harbor is in the floodplain. Everything around the harbor is more or less in the floodplain. We have designed the building, even though it's an existing structure, we are retrofitting it with flood vents. It's in what's referred to as the A zone of the harbor. So we are designing flood vents so that water can flow in and out. We are designing the utility systems to be up above the flood stage. The generator that I referenced to run the facility if we have a power outage will be on a mezzanine level above the flood level. Both the boathouse and the restroom, by code, were required to be denied a building code, because ideally we don't want to put structures in the floodplain. The building commissioner, was required to essentially deny the building permit. Same thing had happened when we, which is under construction, nearing completion, the structure at the trap dock adjacent to the harbor master. That building was also denied, and then we went to the state building code and appealed the decision, and then gave all the rationale as why we feel that the buildings are appropriately designed. Both the upweller and the restroom are flood-proof to the best we can. Again, flood vents, interior treatments that are kind of water resistance or waterproof, utility elevations, and so forth. So we are designing the structure as best we can to deal with the, unfortunate event that could occur if we do get flooded.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, this is obviously a very attractive facility with the Coast Guard building, and from the renderings that we've looked at, I can see that as being much more of an open book gem for the town versus the closed book gem where the upweller consists right now. So I'm envisioning that you're going to have a fair amount of interest from the public in looking at it and using it for recreational purposes, educational purposes. I'm concerned a bit about the traffic situation down there and parking, because that area is used by clammers, it's used by commercial clammers who are going out in their skiffs. It's used by the yacht basin there and people going out to their boats. Is there a plan in place to handle the kind of traffic and parking that you think you will need? I mean, certainly the parking that's actually on site doesn't seem to me to be sufficient for what you could see happening in July and August down there.
And that's a legitimate point. We recognize that. Bridge Street is popular for all kinds of things now. It gets crowded. The site that we are, the parcel itself, has limited parking now. During the summer, it's usually close to being filled up. The marina, has their own parking. Some of their folks occasionally come into our space as well, but that is what it is. We haven't developed yet a sort of parking regulatory kind of approach. I think we may need to. If we do have to reserve space for the town shellfish commercial guys to access their boats, that may be something that we have to do to reserve certain areas for them. We have unfortunately had to do that at a number of town landings throughout the town, as I'm sure you've been reading, to restrict types of usage that may be inconsistent with some of the, traditional use of the facility. So I think this will be something that we have to watch very closely, see if we need to make additional, parking restrictions or regulations along the street side. Again, during the summer days, it's already very crowded, very full. So it's not like we're going to take a pristine open area and all of a sudden completely change it. It's already a very busy area. And if there's no place to park, you're going to have to go to Lighthouse Beach and go to the beach. So.
Is the parking along Bridge Street going northeasterly towards the lighthouse, is that available to use? I know it's used by shell fishermen right now, recreational shell fishermen. Is that available for people to use if they were going to go to the upweller?
It is restricted now because of the popularity that developed with, the changes along Chatham Harbor and Lighthouse Beach. We did institute requirements that you had to be, God, we got so many different types of signs, I'm losing track of who's who. You could park along Bridge Street if you had a, resident is typical, or if you purchased like a Harding's Beach sticker, you could then park on the street, because people were now, a few years ago, using Lighthouse Beach in lieu of going to, say, some of our, recreational beaches with paid parking, and we were kind of losing out, if you will. So you could park there if you got a parking beach sticker. So if someone wanted to use the upwelling system and park there, get a beach sticker.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Keon, for your very comprehensive evaluation of why we should grant this. I had a lot of notes, and you went over, I've never seen anybody go through all 9 purpose and intent of the bylaw, so I have to congratulate you for that. There's the only thing I can think of that hasn't been mentioned, and it's very small, persnickety, we've been called, but what about bike racks? It's the only thing I can think of that hasn't been
Sure,
addressed.
absolutely. How many you want? No, we actually, if I recall, we have one there now. That will have to be relocated and so forth. But no, absolutely, we will be providing bike racks. We want to do that at all these types of facilities.
Jenny?
Thank you for the thorough update. That was very helpful. I have a small question, too. The images that you've shared with us of the Coast Guard station looks like it has 2 stories. Is it really 2 stories, or is it just an open?
No, very high ceilings. The attic level is very high. It's really just a storage area in its traditional historic use. In order for us to put the generator into the building, we actually are lowering the landward side portion to create a lower mezzanine level that will be accessed with a stair system, with the generator, and then from there, into the attic, up from there, which will become another storage area for, gear that's, operating in the facility.
Okay, yeah, if you said it or if it was in here, I missed it. I didn't know what the plans were for use of the second story, if there was one, and it sounds like it's mostly storage, and there is second.
The attic level is definitely storage only. We're not really using that for anything. Then the mezzanine primary purpose is to house the generator system and then access up into the second, or technically now the third level, if you will, the attic.
That's a good idea to elevate the generator. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Dave Each.
Well, I just also want to thank you, Ted, for an excellent presentation. I really don't have any questions that haven't already been addressed by Ted or asked to the others, so I will pass. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I should mention, some folks came in late, but we're about to close the hearing and to go into deliberation. And any public comment was available earlier on. Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Deliberations, and so here we can take them individually or all at once. Let's try all at once, but I don't know. Lee? Lead it off.
All at once. I want to say that I am in favor of this project. I think it's going to be great. I'm fully support the shellfish commercial community and preserving historical buildings. So I think it's a good plan. I think it's definitely a different look for Bridge Street. It might take a little getting used to, but I think it's going to be a great project.
Paul?
Yes, I think in general, the two variance requests do meet our requirements with respect to variances as to the structures and the location. So I think we're in good shape there. And with respect to the special permit, as Randy noted, Ted has gone through all of the issues that we have with respect to special permits and covered them very well. So I intend to support the application with respect to all three projects.
Randy?
Thank you. So we recently just had a training that we could go to, and your presentation should be basically used for a training, because it's the best variance presentation. I know there might be other variances today. Hopefully they listen to your rendition of the three criteria, and you meet everything perfectly. And I congratulate you on that. And so, without any further ado, obviously, I fully support it.
Ginny?
I don't have anything else to add, really, from what my colleagues have said. I feel supportive of it as well. I think the biggest benefit is the return and restoration of that really iconic building to what was originally in Stage Harbor, not in the same location. I think that's very great story. I think it's great for Chatham. I echo what Lee says, though, a little concerned about just the size of it on Bridge Street. But it really blocks, I think, more of the marina than maybe the water, at least from the renderings. And on the whole, I think there's a lot to this proposal. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of it, but I believe the plan as a whole is very positive. I think there's public benefit. You went through that very well. The town is looking for more access to water. It really checks a lot of boxes. So if I were voting, I would support it.
Thank you.
Dave Each.
Yes, well, I agree with all previous, really. I mean, it certainly meets our criteria with respect to the variances as well as the special permit. And I mean, my overall take on this when I first started looking at this is like, this is a perfect solution, or as close to perfect as we could get. I think that the presence of that building, and Lee expressed a little concern, and Jenny, but that is an iconic building. And in my judgment, it belongs there. I mean, yes, it was on the far side for the longest time, but if you look, I just took a quick look at the material that Frank sent us, showing the renovation of the Coast Guard boathouse, very similar to this on Cutty Hunk, and also he mentioned Nantucket. And I think those buildings are located right there in your face, in the harbor entrances and things. So I think that this is and all of the benefits that come from this are just, there's not a proposal that's come before us that I would think that I would ever have wanted to support more than this one, and I will.
Puck?
Listening to the previous comments, I don't think there's any chance of this not being approved, but I don't think it's going to be unanimous. I feel that the building is a little larger than I'd like to see, blocking one of the nicest water views in Chatham. I don't think the issue, or I didn't feel that the way you explained hardship, and I'm not picking it financial, but I'm not sure that there's a true hardship. And I think we're being asked to judge it on the 3 points of a variance. And there definitely is going to be more traffic problems and more parking. And ignoring that is, doesn't matter. It's probably going to pass, but I'm feeling uncomfortable about the traffic. I've seen parking on Bridge Street from Stage Harbor Road around to the harbor master's office, and I've seen it all the way up to the lighthouse. In the weekends, in the summer, it's very, very popular, and all we're doing is adding to it. And I understand how important it is to the town. I understand, and you've made an excellent presentation how everybody wants it, but I feel I'd be ignoring the bylaw by supporting it. I truly hope it passes. My personal preference is to find a way, working with Selectman Shell and Congressman Keating, and maybe a skosh of some good old-fashioned horse trading. And I'm referring to parcel 14A 1-0CG on Morris Island, and return the boathouse to basically where it was for the first 50 years of its life, and then restoring it to a premier upwelling station in the Commonwealth. That's my preference, but so I'm taking an exception. I'm taking a different route on the vote.
From my standpoint, a couple of things strike me. I thought the presentation by Ted was excellent, and there is a hardship, and the hardships that we deal with are all very, very different. There's a hardship to the town to lose an iconic building. There's a hardship to the fishermen, the shell fishermen, going forward with a inadequate upwelling as we have it now. I'm not as concerned about the parking as some of the others are. I happen to go down Bridge Street regularly because I like to avoid going downtown. And I've noticed that the parking along there has dwindled the last several years. It's really unutilized, and this would be a good thing to use it. I can't see there's going to be huge mobs going there every day. I just can't see it. The bike rack question I think is better. It's a great place to stop. I think there used to be a clam shack along there, wasn't there, Ted? Maybe that'll be
Years ago.
Uni Burley in the back can talk to us about her family running a clam shack. I do live down there. Anyway, overall, it's a plan that's going to benefit the town. It's something the town will be proud of. And I think we'll take them one by one, please, Paul.
All right, why don't we start with 23-044, which is the request for a variance with respect to the height of the building and the setback from the road.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that, Buck?
Buck votes no.
Paul?
All vote yes.
Yes,
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes, so it passes 4-1. Okay, Paul, 045, please.
I move to approve the application as submitted with respect to the accessory structure, bathroom and storage, and the required road setback. It's a
And Dave Veach
variance.
seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck abstains.
Paul votes yes.
Yes,
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's 4-1-0 or 4-0-1, whatever it is. Anyway, it passes with 4 yes votes. Okay. And finally, we have 046, please, Paul.
Yes, 23-046 is a request for special permit with respect to the actual construction of the facility and the requirements as proposed there. Again, I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote? Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul votes yes.
yes.
Dave Veach votes
And
yes.
I vote yes. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Mr. Keon.
Thank you all.
Mark, I think we'll take a 5-minute break, please.
talking about the clicker use, I
Okay. We're back on the air, folks. We're back in session. And before we go on to 23-037, there's certain members of this board that love to talk about minutes.
Well, I'll move to approve the minutes of April 27, 2023.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Okay, well, we got that one done. All right. Sarah, 23-037, and Mr. Litchfield, I think you're filling in for Mr. Riley, but we'll do that in its proper order, okay? I didn't mind Mr. Litchfield was filling in on this one. He's filling in for himself. Okay, go ahead.
Application number 23-037, Claire V. Agarwal, David Kumar Agarwal, and Amy Beth Agarwal. Care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 245 Sam Ryder Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 6G, Block 12, Lot M36. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of a screen porch. The existing dwelling is nonconforming and it is located 24.8 feet from the road. The proposed screen porch will be nonconforming in that it will be located 24.8 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 688 square feet, 6%, and the proposed building coverage is 881 square feet, 7.6%, or 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 11,567 square feet, where 30,000 square feet is required in the R30 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protected Bylaw.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Claire, David, and Amy Agarwal, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. The hearing notice, as Sarah read, is probably more complex than what's involved here. It is a very, very simple proposal. The Agarwals have owned this house for almost half a century. There is, as you know from having been out there, a patio. They would like to enclose the patio and make it an unheated, screened-in porch. The lot itself, like everything on that side of Sam Ryder Road, is non-conforming because it contains less than the currently required 30,000 square feet. The house, as shown there, is marginally too close to the road. It is 23.6 feet at the closest end, where 25 feet is now required. The existing porch will be at its closest point, 24.8 feet from the street, and it'll follow the angle of the existing house and be 25.1 feet. So it's a very, very simple proposal. I'll go into it based on the criteria as to adequacy of the site. The site is certainly adequate for the existing house. It will remain adequate with the addition of the screen porch. If you approve the special permit, it will increase coverage to half of what is allowed. It'll still be very small. As to compatibility of size, on the third sheet of the handout, did a comparison of the other houses. We are the smallest in the neighborhood, and we will remain the smallest in the neighborhood if you approve the special permit. Living area is unchanged. The gross floor area with the porch increases to a still small 881 square feet. That's the entire house, not a room, it'll be still 1/3 in terms of gross floor area, 1/3 of the size of the next smallest house in the neighborhood. There's no increase in nonconformity because we're actually less close to the street than the existing house. The site is certainly environmentally suited. It's been zoned, it's been used commercially, or residentially rather, for 60-odd years, and again, the Agarwals have owned it since 1974. And as to scale, mass doesn't really apply to this house, nor will it apply with the addition of a small screened-in porch. There's no impact on streetscape, views, and vistas. The other criteria are not really at issue. The question, as you know, is whether the proposed addition of a very small screen porch on a very small house is substantially more detrimental than the current barely non-conforming structure. It remains small. The addition of 193 square feet of screened-in porch is not going to change that. It will certainly not be detrimental to the neighborhood, let alone substantially more detrimental. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
There is no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. This is from our health agent, Judith Giorgio. She writes on May 23rd, I have no concerns regarding the construction of a screen porch at this property. That's it. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that would like to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, questions from the board. Paul?
I have no questions.
Randy?
No questions.
Jenny?
No questions.
No
Maybe.
question.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote?
Buck
Paul?
approves?
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach
I
approves.
approve. Okay.
Clearly not more substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. It's nice to see a small project with a small house and clearly meets our standards.
I agree.
I agree with Paul.
As do I.
Excellent presentation by the representative.
I agree.
Okay, Paul.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. I don't see a need for conditions on this project.
No. Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
Paul approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
23-042, please, Sarah.
Application number 23-042, Sherry Davenport and Richard Colarusso, 62 Oak Hill Lane, Boylston, Mass. 01505. Owner's property located at 264 Hardings Beach Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 8B, Block 42A, Lot 12. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance from the required abutter setback under Appendix 2 of the protective bylaw for the installation of a retaining wall. The proposed wall is located 5 feet from the westerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The lot contains 21,007 square feet in the R20 zoning district. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Either microphone will be fine.
Oh, great, okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Hopefully I don't break the nice trend here of beautiful presentations. I'm a newcomer. It's the first time we've been in front of the ZBA, hopefully the last. I'm Sherry Davenport, and this is my husband, Richard Colarusso. We reside at 264 Hardings Beach Road and are here representing ourselves to request a dimensional variance from the 15-foot setback for a portion of the stone wall that is currently installed on the property, most of which is in compliance with the protective bylaw. The wall has been covered with soil to within a 3-foot reveal in the section facing the flag lot driveway for 266 Hardings Beach Road to bring it to compliance. We would like to note that we have a legal easement for the abutting driveway and own 50% of the maintenance for it as well. The ask is to allow us to remove the fill in the non-compliant section, which is estimated to be approximately 4.8 of vertical feet in height and 9 feet at the widest point at the base of the wall. The resulting wall height would be approximately 7.8 feet for that 9 feet width that is currently non-compliant. The lot has challenging topography, made even more challenging to ensure that the house met height requirements. The terrain features a significant slope that we have had to both design and work around. The original site plan included a retaining wall that encircled the house from side to side and extended 20 feet from the front. The cement retaining wall on the westerly side of the house was approximately 35 feet long in the plan, with the reveal running from 4 feet to nearly 10 feet in height as it moved toward the street. At the time it was added to the plan, I didn't understand that that was considered the final, to be considered as part of our filing. And installation to that plan would have been fiscally difficult, and we believed pretty much a utilitarian-based eyesore for the neighborhood and the neighbors, for us and the neighbors. Understanding now that we were out of line, frankly, in changing the plan without the approval of the Board of Appeals, we felt at the time that the design reduced the size of a costly and distasteful wall while also enabling us to achieve the height requirement. For this, we are deeply embarrassed and sorry. The slope of fill required to cover the section of the wall at question is so steep and high that it is impossible to reach completely from the top or the bottom. When attempting to plant seed last year, we were unable to stake the mat properly. I was sliding down the hill with the soil coming with me. So we were unable to stake the mat properly to ensure that the seed and the soil were not washed away. Thus, by the next day, the wind had lifted the mat, resulting in the weeds that you see here that have now taken hold. In fact, there was a baby fox that was having his way playing with the mat. My husband turned 70 this summer, and this is meant to be our retirement home. We do all of the maintenance on the property ourselves, which is the reason why, a lot of it has taken so long. We are attempting to limit the landscape upkeep by limiting the amount of lawn and plantings that require maintenance, and are choosing to keep a Cape Cod lawn on the slope in front of the house that's not flat, going to the street. It is our feeling that the wall does not cause substantial detriment to the neighborhood as it is less obtrusive to our abutters to the west than the larger wall that was reflected on the original plan, and would have been than the original plan would have been, and as well as the steep, it is so steep it's difficult to maintain. Removal of the soil would also help to limit runoff potential to the street. The wall is made of the same stone as a jetty, and given the coastal nature of the community, we felt it was fitting. Since most of the wall is compliant to the bylaw, we also feel the requested relief would not substantially derogate from the intent and the purpose of the bylaw. We respectfully request the granting of a dimensional variance to allow the retaining wall on our property facing the west to be revealed to 5 feet from our shared driveway. There is at least 50 feet between the wall and the nearest house. We appreciate your time and consideration, and again, we sincerely apologize for the missteps that we've made along the way.
Thank you. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate now you'd like to speak.
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. The first is from Judith Giorgio, town's health agent. She writes on 5/23, the stone retaining wall that was constructed was not what was proposed on the original septic site plan approved by the Board of Health in 2017. The Board of Health approved a septic system with IA technology at that time. Currently, the Board of Health has not issued a certificate of compliance on that system. No final startup of the system was ever conducted, and the engineer has not submitted the required certified as-built plan. The retaining wall as constructed does not appear to encroach on the septic system as proposed and installed. However, an as-built showing the wall and system will be required to issue the final COC on the system. In addition, we have no record of any effluent testing completed as required by the BOH. The property is not in compliance with the requirement of their septic system permit. And this is a letter. This is written by James Athanas, trustee for 10 Tappan Drive, and Helen Athanas also is a letter writer. He writes, I'm trustee of 10 Tappan Drive, where my elderly mother has resided for many years. 10 Tappan Drive abuts 264. I am writing to object to the applicant's request for a variance. Our objections to this retaining wall include its extreme size, its close proximity to our property line, and the fact that the applicant can accomplish his goal, which we believe is aesthetic only, in a less obtrusive manner. The negative impact to our view such that we would be looking at an enormous retaining wall from our deck and yard, and the unreasonable and seemingly never-ending construction noise and dust that will have to be endured with no time limit in place will once again render our deck and yard unusable. My mother is 86 and has been patient for years as the applicant and her contractors have continuously done construction work on this home and yard. My mother has tolerated regular use of the backhoe and dump truck, vehicles that appear to be permanently parked on the applicant's property. My mother's view out of the kitchen window is currently the large yellow backhoe, and has been for a number of years. Construction noise from the beginning has at times been on weekends, holidays, and in some instances before sunrise. Many times over the years, the deck has been unusable due to construction noise and dust from the applicant's property. The town has also had to remove sand and other construction debris from the front of the applicant's property due to the never-ending construction. I hope that the ZBA agrees with our objections to the applicant's request for a variance and rejects the request based on the facts and that the applicant has the ability to fulfill his needs without infringing on the other property owner's quality of life. Should the ZBA choose to approve the applicant's request, despite our objections, we kindly ask that we are notified by mail what our rights, if any, to appeal would be. Additionally, we respectfully request the following, at minimum, mandatory conditions be put in place to protect 10 Tappan Drive and reduce ongoing construction noise, dust, any other nuisance issues created by the endless construction. To that end, would the board be kind as to put the following orders, as well as any others it deems appropriate, in place. 1, restrict the owner and all contractors from doing construction work on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. This would not only apply to contractors, but also personal use. 2, work proceeding on Monday through Friday can only take place within hours of 9 to 3. 3, require that the applicant install a temporary barrier for erosion control and a barrier to prevent construction debris. 4, require that the applicant's large backhoe and dump truck be stored in his garages when not in use. And 5, require that the work be completed by a specific date. We would like to thank the board for their time and consideration. Then we have a letter dated May 17th. This is from Niels and Bettina Hornelli, perhaps, 266 Hardings Beach Road. I'm the property owner of 266, directly abutting the western edge. My driveway runs adjacent to the portion of his lot that contains the retaining wall in question. Several years ago, we had large boulders embedded around the house on the architectural lighthouse structure of his home as a decorative feature, suggesting the appearance of a lighthouse on a rocky outcrop. The base of this rock structure is some 3 to 6 feet from my driveway. My wife and I completely understood the look he is trying to achieve, and we find the architectural feature impressive and pleasing to behold. We don't see it as a retaining wall and don't have any objection to it at all, including its location close to our driveway. Since our driveway is along a narrow panhandle connecting our main lot to the street, it does not seem intrusive to our property, and we really only see when we go or come. In conclusion, we support his request for a variance and don't feel the rock structure infringes on us in any way. And then we have a note dated May 10th. This is from Hendrik Christensen, 16 Tappan Drive. We cannot support any variance proposals for this house, including for the retaining wall, which we cannot, it's in capitals, support either. Please confirm this is sufficient to add to our opposition to the file. Okay. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone, either here in the audience or on Microsoft Teams, that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Would the applicant like to reply to either of those negative letters?
Yes, please. I did speak to Helen Athanas this morning. I did explain that during, the COVID years, we had contractors who effectively left us to work for the larger construction companies in the area. I was constantly on the phone begging contractors to come back, and they would come and go at their will, which at times was months in between. I shared with her that I understand her frustration, and I frankly, my husband and I share her frustration. We've been left to, at his age and, this stage of our lives, try to do what we can in the amount of time that we have. And frankly, for me, if I have to help him, it could very well be on a weekend. I shared with her that I felt bad that, number one, I never went to her to share with her our hardships. And that I had hoped that if she had hardships with us or concerns, that she should, would have felt comfortable enough, because we were friendly, to come and speak to me about it. I believe that at this point in time, we've come to a common understanding as to each other's concerns. I won't say, I don't think I can say that she would absolutely jump up and down and say that she's, in favor of the wall, but I do believe she did share with me that most or many of the folks that were notified of our ask were confused, frankly, by what it was we were asking. I think that, they felt that they misunderstood it to be an addition to, or an extension to the wall that we have, as opposed to just uncovering a portion of the wall to get rid of the weeded area and to make it more easy to maintain. They were calling her, not me, and she didn't know either, but she didn't come to ask, and we didn't think to, and honestly, I thought she wasn't even around, because she lives part-time in Florida. So we did have that conversation. As for Mr. Henriksen, I think is the name, we've come to understand over the years, and Jay shared with us very early on, and excuse me for being, really upset and nervous about even having to have this conversation, but we have met all zoning requirements with that house. I understand that the town is frustrated with the types of houses that have been going into the town of late, but at the time, and I believe we still continue to meet the zoning requirements with that house, but I personally believe that that our neighbors are frustrated, that they weren't notified and didn't have a voice for the house or the pool or anything that is frankly in compliance with zoning and did not require us to come to the ZBA for approval. So by the tone of the email from Mr. Henriksen, though I can't and shouldn't assume, sort of indicates to me that, he doesn't like the house and is not supportive of anything that we're doing, on our property. Related to the note from Judy representing the Board of Health, we don't know how it happened, but we general contracted the house ourselves. We work with Coastal Engineering, a very prominent civil engineering firm in the area, with John Schneibel, who is very well known and respected. And how it was missed that the as-built was never sent to Judy Giorgio is anyone's guess. When I called John, when I saw the first I had seen of it was the package that Sarah had sent to us, and similarly, almost immediately, Jay had also sent us a note to make us aware. I immediately called John. Luckily, he's still working part-time for Coastal, and we've been able to rectify it, and John, as of this afternoon, has sent the appropriate documentation to Judy. With regard to the IA system, we have called the wastewater treatment company and are making arrangements for them to come out immediately. The blower is on for the IA system, and once again, it was a mess. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, questions from the board? Jenny?
I don't have any questions.
Dave?
I think I have questions. I'm just not sure. I'm trying to formulate this. I'm gonna try to involve Jay here too, because I don't completely understand with respect to your characterization of things and all. Jay, could you maybe just run me through the history of this a little bit? I mean, I'm a little confused. Part of what confuses me is, I went out and looked at the situation, and I see on the as-built, I see the riprap wall drawn and the dimensions and things shown. But in your presentation, you talked about the slope of where you put earth on on what I assume to be the lower part of the riprap wall and covering that in order to vegetate it, et cetera. So which part of it is, how much of this is the wall in respect of being covered, whatever, to help me to understand?
So the project, when it was permitted, met all the criteria for a by right. They didn't require a special permit.
Okay.
All the zoning criteria. It was a lengthy build, lengthy process. At the final inspection, it was noticed that the boulder retaining wall exceeded the maximum allowable height to the abutter setback.
Okay, yeah.
And so what Mr. Colarusso had indicated, or had asked, if he could cover the wall to the point where it would comply with the setback, and I
Okay.
thought that was a reasonable request at that time.
Yeah,
He did put down the jute mats so he could get grass growing on that slope to hold the slope, because it is fairly steep.
yeah.
And now here we are. I saw that they had requested the variance to remove that fill, so the wall will exceed the requirement in the bylaw.
Oh, that's what it, so the fill being on there, it gets it to the height. So it was addressing the height of the wall with respect to the proximity to the sideline.
It made it comply with the 3-foot
3-foot.
exposed face towards the abutter.
Okay, so actually what they're seeking to do is be able to expose the rest of or more of the wall, and that's the need for the variance.
That's correct. And this shouldn't affect the building height. It does comply with the building height requirement. If
Yeah.
they remove that fill, that should have no bearing on the building height.
Okay. And I'm just curious in all of this, trying to formulate what took place. The original plan with respect to the grading and retaining walls and things on the street side of the house, how was that different than how you ended up?
On the street side, that would be in front of the house, or did you mean on the driveway side?
The front of the house, right, the street side, yeah, the front of
May
the
I
house.
approach the bench, if you will? I can show you the,
You can, but don't speak, please, because unless you're speaking into the microphone, you can't have that.
I see. And this, okay, yeah.
So Dave, would you tell us what you discovered?
So, yeah, what she's showing is, and they don't say, this doesn't, at least I can see what the materials would be, but it showed the original plan had a retaining wall coming off basically from the corner of the tower, paralleling the lot line so that it met the 15-foot setback requirement for the structure to be. At 15 feet, it could be any height that they need, right?
That's
Okay, so
correct.
then that extended toward the street for, I don't know what the scale is, but it looks if it's 20.
it's approximately 35 feet.
All right, so extending towards the road about 35 feet. Then there's a little bit of a jog, and then it's going to go across parallel to the front of the house. And with a little bit of a jog in it, so it's not a straight line. And then goes to the other side, and a retaining wall returning to the eastern corner of the house, which that's probably about 20 feet or something like that, 22, 23 feet. So they want, the proposal was to basically bench off the front of the house to create more of a flat area, with the retaining wall. Okay, so that was the original proposal. You've since, and that's the part that was not, that didn't get built the way it was shown.
Correct.
And so you built the riprap wall on the side, and you're trying to your proposal is to maintain the slope as it is more or less now on the front property, rather than having a large retaining wall running across the front of the house.
Correct.
Okay.
As Sherry mentioned,
You have to introduce yourself, please.
hi, Rich Colarusso,
Thank you.
the worst half of the family. So as she mentioned, we thought that we were doing a good service for us and our neighbors. That was going to be a 12-inch concrete wall, 10 feet high when it went out. So we cut that wall to a third, and now resloping it. Instead of having a wall with a retaining, we've met the height requirements, and now we're just going to slope it off to the street, which you probably noticed I had started on one side, and we were waiting for this to finish the rest this summer. So I believe that I think the riprap wall, looking like a lighthouse on a revetment, is much nicer than a concrete wall that would have been there, poured concrete wall. So I think you did a fine job.
Okay, so that, yeah, thanks. I think clarifies for me a little better. And I will, so I'm not going to do too much in the way of comments because I'm questioning still. It might not be possible I know it's a fair amount of work, but given the situation, that now we found out that this does require a variance, and variances are difficult to obtain. Might it not be possible to rebuild the riprap wall in such a way that it met the 15-foot sideline setback requirement, and still return in such a way to keep the rest of the grading as you've proposed, as you want to do it now?
No, it is not feasible to have the riprap wall. That would all have to come out and be moved back to where the concrete wall is.
I think
That's all.
that this might have been included in your package.
That's the one, that's the one I'm
Yes.
looking at.
Yeah, so if you look at that section, it's at 15.7 feet from the
Right.
property line, so it would pretty much be impossible to put anything there that, aside from just a straight retaining wall.
Well, okay.
To stay
I mean, I
within-
do
to
understand.
stay
A
within the
riprap wall
15.
it can't be vertical. It'd be very difficult to create one that was completely vertical in nature. So the proposal that you originally had was a vertical poured concrete wall.
Correct.
That
Correct.
was, going to be about 10 feet of exposure, something like that.
Correct.
So I think what you're saying is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wouldn't be able to, in order to comply with the sideline setback and have the height of the wall be what it needs to be, it would, at least as far as costs are concerned, would be not necessarily pleasing, as aesthetically pleasing.
We believe that to be true.
Unless you were to treat the face of the wall in some way to mitigate the appearance of it. And so would you need to think, here's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to understand, if you, in addition to the changing and the riprap and the various things, you also changed the proposal for the grading all across the front of the house. You proposed, you didn't want to carry a 10-foot wall all along the front of the house. So you've overcome that by getting to a slope.
Correct.
That still doesn't change the height requirements that you
Correct.
need. But it doesn't require a retaining wall, a flat and then a retaining wall.
Right.
So, given your new proposed grading, how far would a wall that met the 15-foot requirement need to extend towards the road?
All we're asking is.
You can't speak away from the mic, I'm sorry.
Just stand here and point. Richie, no.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So this whole section here is in compliance. All of this is in compliance. The piece that's missing out of compliance is about the size of this board. So right here, if as we saw, we filled it in with dirt that you probably noticed,
Yeah.
which makes it in compliance. So all we're looking to do is just take away 4 feet of dirt so that I can then manage that, expose the rocks that are underneath. So it's really what did you say, 4 feet by 7 feet or something?
nine.
It's less than the size of this that we're looking to remove dirt. The rest of the wall is all in compliance. And as it sits today, it's in compliance, but it's just a hardship for me to look at and work with because it's so steep. So if I could just cut it down a little, then I can work on it with a smaller slope and the hardship goes away.
So would you say, so you've indicated there's a hardship
Yes.
here. Would you also, and you also are, it seems to me you're saying that because of the topography of the lot,
Yep.
this is also part of your request. This is a reason why you're seeking variance. You're seeking because of the topography of the lot, and you're presenting that it would be a hardship were we not to grant a variance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Those are the questions. That's the only, thank you.
Yeah,
Those are the only
okay.
questions. I have.
No questions.
Lee?
No questions.
Paul?
Well, I had the benefit of seeing Richard and Sherry when I was out there. So he was able to explain to me what the situation was in terms of the wall being covered partially, in part, I think, because of Jay's suggestion. I guess one question I have is it possible, Jay, for them to put additional terracing, landscaping terracing in there such that they would be compliant and not expose the additional footage on the wall?
Terraced walls in the bylaw need to meet the setback, so there's no advantage to that.
So that's if there's a wall, but if there's no wall, if you're using landscaping material such as he did against the wall itself as it is now, could that not comply?
Well, I believe it's in compliance now by the
Right.
placement of that fill. That's why we,
So if he put additional fill in that area,
he could do that. I see, yeah, to lessen the slope.
okay.
Yep.
Well,
It's,
that's not really true because I've got the slope going out to my property line. To bring in more fill, I would be going into my neighbor out back, 66's.
and Nils has made it clear to us that the area of his property line, he wants to remain flat.
Generally flat.
In front of the garages, and in that area, he wants it all to be flat. He brings a boat in and out, and he wants it wide and flat.
Yeah, Jay, thank you again. I don't know, Jay, help me. This right here is about his property line. When I put my remediation for runoff, this is my neighbor's property. The person that lives out back, this is his panhandle, he owns that, and right about here is the driveway that goes up. And so this is the edge of my property, so I brought the slope all the way out to my property line, and to keep the 3 feet up here, I have no choice, but it's like that. So I can't bring any more fill in unless, like Jay was saying, I would have to build a barrier here, and that's against zoning as well.
Have you talked with a landscaper about what you could plant in that area that would hold the soil and perhaps could be attractive?
I'm gonna have to go with probably no on that.
We
have done a lot of
We have
research.
talked with a landscaper about the front of the house, which also has a pretty steep slope.
Right.
His response was, why aren't you putting in a retaining wall?
Yeah, so it is quite a hardship for us, and we've been trying to do the best we can, but I don't know what else I mean, there's really no other solution that I see. Otherwise, I would have done it, so I don't enjoy coming here. I know if she doesn't enjoy coming here, but we really think that the easiest thing for everyone concerned, once again, there would have been, if we went with the original thing, this would have been a stone wall or poured concrete wall, 35 feet. They would have been looking at a 35-foot long, anywhere from 5 to 10 feet high concrete wall. Our neighbors, that's what they would have looked at. I think the riprap looks significantly better than that, and it's only a third the size of what's on the plan for what was supposed to be there, as we then sloped it off instead of had the original designed retaining wall. I think from a perspective of beauty, I think this is much better than have a cement retaining wall around the front of the house.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Okay.
Randy?
Record, I like to say yes. I start with yes, okay?
Well, I appreciate
This is your
that.
property. You didn't have to get a special permit for this because you have a conforming lot, right? Mm-hmm. And you met all the setbacks. You don't have any restrictions when it comes to noise and any of that. You can work 24/7 if you want, basically, as long as you don't violate any town bylaws. But you didn't get any restrictions, so you've taken your time, and that's all interesting. But are you a contractor?
No.
No. Okay. So just for the purposes of the audience, I just want to, or anybody that's listening, on page 11 of our bylaw, number 90, it defines retaining wall, and this kind of basically explains what we're talking about with the 3 feet. So any retaining wall that's 7 feet or higher can only show 3 feet of vertical unless it's within the setback. So that's where it comes from. It's interesting that this is one of the only definitions in the rule is in the definition. It's kind of, I find that interesting. So anyway, so we're just talking about the fact that you're right now only allowed to expose 3 feet, and that's why you have to cover it up with all that dirt, and it looks lousy.
Correct?
It does. But you thought in the first place you were just gonna put a cement wall there. Do you have to, is it really retaining anything? What is it retaining? What is that actually doing? Is it functional, or do you just want it to look nice?
Well,
It's,
originally, the wall was put there to meet our height set. We had to have 20 feet out around the house, flat, roughly flat, to get the 30-foot height restrictions on the house. So we had to have that retaining wall so we could fill it all in, so the 20 feet would be met per,
Okay, so that's kind of above.
so that's why the retaining wall has to be there.
So you have to have a wall there.
We have to have a
Have to
wall.
have a wall. I just want to be clear on that. All right, so you have to have a wall. That one looks nice. And you could maybe have put the house over to the right a little bit, and then you wouldn't have this problem? Is that true? I mean, I know we're not asking you to move the house now or anything,
no.
but is it true that if the house was just over 5
Yes.
feet?
Yes.
Yeah, so
true.
kind of poor planning?
you could
You
call
could-
it that.
You
The
confessed
rock
to
wall
a
came
lot of
many
things,
years
yeah.
after the house was
Yeah,
put in,
yeah.
but, okay.
So you're basically asking forgiveness instead of permission when it comes to this wall?
which is why I apologized.
No,
and-
no, I know you did.
Yeah.
I know you did. And I had the benefit of meeting with you when I went over too, and I understand, and I want you to be able to have your variance, trust me. I told you that, and I wanted you to think about your hardship. And you do have a hardship, but it's not the kind of hardship that the law provides for, that I can that I can see really. What else could you do besides, you know, fill that area? Is there something else that will look nice that you can do?
I don't believe so. I don't think the law I don't know. It has to be filled.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Is
I
there another kind of wall that you
can't
could,
build another wall.
well, no other kind of wall that would meet?
Meet the criteria of the town, correct? I mean, as we were talking earlier, I can't build a tiered thing.
No.
And so
What
We would
about
have to rip that one out and put in like the original,
cement wall.
right?
cement wall?
Yeah.
Okay, and it has to be 10 feet tall?
I don't know that it needs to be 10 feet tall.
Could
No,
it be- could it
just the
be-
original design is that.
Okay, so how about a lower wall? I mean, why does it have to be 10 feet tall?
It has to be that high to get the height restrictions for the house.
For the
So
house,
it
and then
you
the
have to be,
slope of the land is pretty steep, the house, I mean, it's an
Does it,
interplay
Jay,
of a
have
lot
to
of
be 10
different
feet tall?
calculations.
Well, the grade plane is what establishes the maximum building height.
Yeah.
So they're maxed out at their building height. So the grade that exists right now just makes it, if they drop the grade anywhere, then it's not gonna comply, and then they're gonna have an issue with the height. So could they do another wall? Yeah, they probably could do another wall, but they'd have to remove this wall to do a wall that would be conforming and comply. And I mean, it could be bolder again, closer to the center of the house on the end of the turret, or it could be a poured concrete wall, but, I mean, there's any number of scenarios that could be run, but the building height is a concern if they're gonna be regrading in the area.
All right, what about, so the people that this property impinges on, they don't mind this?
no,
No, I know, they're in
no.
support of it.
Yeah,
So they own the driveway, right?
Right.
Do you ever think about buying some of the driveway from them, 5 feet of it?
We have a legal easement on the driveway.
Yeah, I know, but you could
And we
maybe
have
do
to
some.
maintain it, so I don't,
well. to
Could
answer
you
the que-
purchase some of the driveway from them?
I don't believe then we would make him out of compliance. It has to be 30 feet wide, and it's exactly 30 feet. So if he was to sell us 5 feet, then he wouldn't be in compliance for his driveway.
Yeah, all right, I'm just throwing around ideas.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
And Buck approves.
Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Deliberations, Buck.
Pretty much the same as the last hearing. They do have a hardship. I don't, I feel very uncomfortable with this for the same reasons David went through, trying to figure out what was going on. I like working to a stamp print, and then the representative came over and gave him another print that I don't know what they were looking at, and had a conversation. Bottom line for me is, it looks like, and I think Randy was doing a good job alluding to it, looks like it's a self-imposed hardship, and I don't think that is something that meets our standards. So I'm unfortunately not going to be able to support it.
Lee?
Well, I'm not voting on this one, but I would agree that the topography of the land is very unique. But it's a tough situation. Yeah, I would agree with Buck in that it was a self-created hardship. It's not very attractive right now, the way it is, but I'm not sure how to solve for it.
Paul?
Well, I'm sympathetic to the position that these homeowners find themselves in, because it's been a tough row to hoe, given COVID and the contractors and all of the rest of it. And I understand that they wanted to maximize their height, and in order to maximize their height, they had to have a flat area coming out that they could take their measurements from, and that creates the wall. The real difficulty here is that it's pretty clearly a self-imposed hardship. Under the provisions of the law that we're restricted by, we can't recognize that as a basis on which to grant a variance. So it puts us in a difficult position. I think the solution here is a landscaping solution. I think that there is probably a way for a creative landscaper to work with you and deal with keeping that portion of the wall covered and still have it work out with the rest of your front yard. So I would suggest that that's a possibility for you to approach. Those are my thoughts.
Randy?
Okay, so I wouldn't have, if I thought I was the only one to say no, I would say yes, but it seems like it doesn't matter what I say. I don't think you're going to prevail here. But I think I probably would have found a way if I had to. But it's a difficult one. Like that was my first impression. You have the topography, you have the third prong pretty well. It doesn't really derogate from the intent of the bylaw much. It's not really overcrowding of land, so to speak. But that hardship is tricky, and I'm sorry that it doesn't look like you're going to prevail on it.
Jenny?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Mrs. Davenport, you did a really nice job with your presentation, and Mr. Colarusso, as Mr. Semple said, I sympathize. The criteria for variance is very difficult, and you have to meet all three. And as we're saying, and I don't disagree that it's a self-imposed hardship. I'm not voting either, but if I were, I wouldn't be able to support it. I'm not a landscape architect, but I do a lot of gardening, and I agree with Paul's idea of trying that. There's something that's been successful called creeping juniper, and it's low growing and it holds, and that might be something that you could try.
Dave Veach?
This is a tough one. And frequently, when it comes to tough ones, I tend to be I try to be forgiving, and I do understand that the issue about self-imposed hardship, et cetera. I guess I'm going to say that I don't necessarily, I guess what I would say is I could support this. I would make a determination that the hardship exists and that would satisfy that requirement for me. I think that the changes that they proposed to make and that they did make kind of unknowingly violating the law, I believe are an improvement over what the original plan showed. With respect to the bench and the retaining wall running across the front of the house and things. And I definitely think that the riprap wall looks a lot better than any kind of a poured concrete or even an engineered stone wall. It looks better, but you can't stack them up vertically and have them be effective particularly. The closest neighbor who they share the driveway with doesn't object to it. All things considered, I guess I'll just I could go in the opposite direction, and I can support this. I think the solution that they came up with is a good one. I don't know that having to stretch to try to cover all but 3 feet of it. I think that probably can be done, but it's certainly not easy. You know, there's not a lot of soil on top of those stones there. And there may be ways to do it. Anyway, I can support granting a variance on this.
From my perspective, it's definitely a self-imposed hardship. You know, when I look at what you've done, you maxed out the height of the house, you maxed out, as far as I can see. I didn't look at the specifics, but it looks like you maxed out the dimensions. And so, you know, it was, we could call it poor pre-planning or whatever it is, but the fact is the hardship doesn't qualify because it's on you. The litmus test I use is needs versus wants. You want to have that. And as has been pointed out, it looks better. I understand that. But to me, with a variance, it has to be a need. And likewise, it doesn't qualify as a need. I'll give you an opportunity to, we'll take a vote if you like, or if you wish, you can withdraw without prejudice. It's entirely up to you.
Well, you want to withdraw without prejudice? I mean, we can go back to, it'll never pass again. We had very low expectations.
Our expectations were set by the ZBA members that we spoke to when they came to the property, so we understand, but I think we would like to withdraw without prejudice.
And I got somewhat optimistic when I saw what you allowed happen in the first place, where they are so far out of, enough said.
I'll move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. 23035, please.
Application number 23-035, David Chu and Laura Tosi, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 52 Homestead Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15C, Block 3, Lot 16. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming and that it is located 7.4 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 5.3 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 704 square feet, 18.4%, and the proposed building coverage is 991 square feet, 25.9%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 3,820 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protected Bylaw.
Mr. Riley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Bill Riley, and respectfully ask that this matter be continued until June 8. And Sarah has indicated that there is availability on that date.
Do you have a letter authorizing you to speak for Mr. Riley?
Mr. Attorney Ford is drafting it as we speak, so.
Okay.
We actually do.
We do?
Yes.
Mr. Riley and I did talk about this, and we exchanged emails in that regard. I think Sarah was copied.
Okay.
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to June 8th.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves. Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Sarah, let's try 23-038, please.
Application number 23-038, Robert Intel Jr. and Alex Intel, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 2388 Main Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 4E, Block 7, Lot 2B. The applicant seeks a special permit under Section 3D3I to allow for a use permitted in the less restrictive zone to be authorized for the entire lot. If the lot is authorized to be used for R20 purposes, the applicant seeks to construct a garage with living area, guest house. The lot contains 65,436 square feet in the R20 and R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Sections 3D3I and 8D2B of the protective bylaw.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield for clarity, here on behalf of Rob and Alex and Tilly, who could not be here today, but I am here on their behalf asking for a special permit, and it's not the change of a non-conforming use or a structure, a special permit. It is instead a special permit authorized under our bylaw and under Mass General laws. Short version is that the Antilles have a large lot, 65,000 square feet as shown there. But the diagonal line, the lower or right-hand portion is R20. The top of it is R60. They have a home which is completely in the R20 zone. Sarah has the cursor over it, and they'd like to build a small guest house adjacent to the house for in-laws and other family and so forth. So you know that a guest house requires 20,000 square feet in addition to the minimum lot size. Well, in the R20 zone, it's 20,000 square feet. 20,000 extra square feet is 40,000. We have 65,000. Why are we here? We are here because Jay has decided, and I'm not arguing, that because part of our lot is R60, the best course is to come to you and ask for relief under another section of our bylaw, which says that when a district boundary line divides a lot, the applicant can ask the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit to authorize the use from the less restrictive one to go into the more restrictive one. Usually, it's dealt with, a commercial lot where you've got the front of it is got a business on it and the back of the lot is residential. And you want to have the business go into the residential zone. This is a somewhat different aspect. But Jay felt that the best way to make sure there were no difficulties was to ask you to allow the R20 guest house to use the lot size from the R60 zone. It's a complex and imperfect explanation, but it's Jay's fault. So that's why we're here. So what we're proposing is to build a small 900-odd square foot guest house. And you went out there. This is not exactly Main Street. It is Main Street, but it's not exactly an obvious location. It's tucked in. We're surrounded on the east side by Chatham Conservation Foundation land, on the southwest and northeast side by vacant lots. The town has recently purchased a large tract immediately to the north of here, or not immediately to the north, but north on the far side of the railroad right-of-way, which is going to be affordable housing. So this is not something that's terribly visible. We are tucked in. So I'll go into the criteria, and they are somewhat different, as you know. As to adequacy of the site in terms of size for the proposed use, again, we have a very large site, 65,436 square feet, all of which is buildable upland. So we're not seeking the waiver of lot size, which you sometimes hear. That acre and a half plus lot is adequate for the existing house and for the proposed guest house, with a resulting coverage of just 4.5% if you approve the special permit where 10% is allowed. We meet all the dimensional requirements with ease. As to suitability of the site, it's a residential use in a residential area. It's an isolated site set back from Route 28, shielded by vegetation. Again, we have open space to the east and rather distant undeveloped parcels to the north and the west. The southerly abutter down on the lower left-hand side, we're 100 feet away from their lot line, and their house is way back down by the fire station. So we have a large lot with double the necessary excess of 20,000 square feet. As to impact on traffic flow and safety, there is none. As to impact the neighborhood visual character, including views and vistas, again, there is none. We're screened vegetatively. We're about 175 feet back from Main Street, somewhat more than that. It's been reviewed and approved by the HBDC, and you kind of scratch your head and say, well, if it's a residential zone, why is the HBDC involved? Because it was 40 years ago, when the Historic Business District Commission was created, at the time, this was zoned small business. And the HBDC jurisdictional lines have not changed despite the zoning lines. So even though it's purely residential, we went to the HBDC. We made some responsive trim details at their request, so they are satisfied, and the chair will read a letter from them. There's no impact on views and vistas. Again, it's in a private location. It's a simple and appropriate design. As to adequacy of sewage disposal and water, we're putting in a new septic system, which is more than sufficient for the one additional bedroom. The main house has, I think, 3 bedrooms. This will have 1 more, where a guest house can have 2. We're only asking for 1. But we have a septic system with 60,000 square feet sufficient for 6 bedrooms, and this Board of Health letter will be read by the chair. And again, we have town water. All utilities are there. There is no noise and litter issues as to compatibility of the proposed use with surrounding land uses. Again, a residential use in a residential zone. There is some residual small businesses in the broader area. The guest house will be, in any case, some 200 feet from the nearest abutter's house. I did speak to one abutter who owns property on the south side of Route 28, a Mr. Summers, Sean Summers, name may be known to some of you. He has no objection. As to impact on natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, there is none. There are no wetlands on the property. The guest house is located to preserve as many trees as feasible, and there are no environmental concerns. So we're simply asking authority from you to use all of the lot for, guest houses are allowed in the R60 zone, but we're asking for you to, your permission to use that toward the calculation of the lot size, and I think it's a fairly straightforward request. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, indicate now you'd like to join the conversation.
There is no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. The first is from Judith Giorgio, our health agent. She writes on 5/23, I've reviewed the plan to add a 1-bedroom garage/house to this property. The Health Division has approved the SDS plan for a total of 6 bedrooms at the property, including the proposed guest house/garage. I have no concerns. And then, as Mr. Litchfield mentioned, this has been in front of the HBDC, and they have sent to us a certificate of appropriateness. The commission on April 19th, 2023, voted 5 in favor, 0 in opposition, 0 abstaining, to approve with conditions. The condition is the trim and overhang on the garage will match the house, and 1x6 trim will be installed around the garage doors. That is the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak either against or has a specific question? If so, indicate you'd like to speak.
There's no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, questions from the board? Lee?
I have no questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Just the one question, Bill. I'm glad that the HBDC weighed in on this, but I'm thinking, don't the regulations seek that it's visible from a public way? Is this really visible? I'm just curious.
So Nickerson Road actually
Is a public.
is considered a private way, so it would be visible if that road had actually been built.
That's, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So recap that for us. What's he talking about?
The HBDC rules and regulations state, or they could file for a certificate of exemption if a project located within their jurisdiction is not visible from a public or private way or park. And it is on the applicant to be able to prove that.
Boy, you learn something new every day. I learned a lot new today. Okay. Yes, Buck, what do you think? Oh, don't know what you think. Questions?
Thank you very much. Does it matter, or we'll ask it another way, is the primary home, is that a two-family home?
The assessor's records say that there was an apartment. There is no apartment in there. And that was one of the first questions that I asked the applicant. The house has been there for a very, very long time. It had a fire, give or 10 years ago before the Antilles bought it. It was renovated, remodeled, and there is no apartment. It's a single-family residence.
Huh. When I was there visiting or site, they came out of the back door and they said, but if you have any more questions, you have to go to the front door. So and I thought that was an unusual situation because.
No.
Okay.
It may have been humor. May have been intended as humor. But no, it's a single-family residence.
Under what conditions could another house or dwelling be built on this lot?
It couldn't. Under our bylaw, you can only have one single-family residence per lot. And this is one lot, even though it's divided between R20 and R60. Moreover, the bylaw says you can only have one guest house per lot. So the house and the guest house are the maximum, absent a variance.
Is there any way this lot could be subdivided so that you would end up with two lots?
Under current zoning, the answer is no. Two reasons, lot size and also access. There's already a panhandle lot, not ours, off of Nickerson Circle. Lane, Circle, what Circle? Yeah, Nickerson Lane is down by Harding's Beach. Nickerson Circle already has a panhandle going way up to the northwest. Our frontage is on Nickerson Circle. So the combination of frontage and lot size would preclude a subdivision.
Thank you.
Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves?
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Let's see, deliberations, Paul?
I think it meets our standard. The current use will not be detrimental to the established or future character of the neighborhood, of the town, and the use involved will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw.
I agree with Paul.
I think the plans look nice. It meets, and agree with Paul, it meets the criteria.
I agree with all previous.
Ditto.
I agree too.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves?
Randy approves?
Dave Veach approves.
I approve, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
'23 043, please, Sarah.
Application number 23-043, Chatfield Company, Inc., care of Michael D. Ford Esquire, P.O. Box 485, West Harwich, Mass. 02671. Owner of property located at 356 Stage Harbor Road, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 13B, Block 30, Lot 11. The applicant seeks to modify special permit number 22-098 granted on November 10th, 2022, which allowed for an alternate design of the proposed dwelling. The applicant now seeks to modify this special permit to remove condition number 3A, which prohibited exterior construction between June 30th and Labor Day. The property is located in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 14, and Section 8D2B of the Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Ford?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Mike Ford, representing the applicant, Chatfield Company, Inc., whose president is here to my right, Mr. Oppenheim. It's been a long afternoon, so I'll try and get right to the core of the issue here. This is a house that's under construction, has the benefit of permits from this board. This board, as its general customary policy, imposed conditions with respect to construction between June 30th and Labor Day. Among those conditions were three. A, no exterior construction will be allowed. B, no work shall be permitted on the weekends. And C, construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. That's for the period between June 30th and Labor Day. We filed a requested modification to seek to have 3A deleted. That would be, would permit exterior construction between June 30th and Labor Day. We did that, or Mr. Oppenheim decided to do that, on the basis of meeting with his three abutters. He has one on each side and one to the rear. Explained to them what he wanted to do in terms of trying to make the house and the garage portion tight to the weather, and to level the lot, and then seed it, loam and seed, or astroturf or something in order to keep the dust down. Not astroturf.
Not astroturf.
Not astroturf. We then filed, having discussions with all three of those. You have emails, Mr. Chairman, from all three immediate abutters that they agreed with that. And then we became aware of others in the greater neighborhood, not the immediate abutters, who objected to striking this particular condition. Recognizing that the condition in the first instance is to benefit the immediate abutters, we also recognize that it's also meant to benefit the greater area, not simply the immediate abutters, and in a sense, the town itself in terms of trying to limit construction during the summer months. So recognizing that, Mr. Oppenheim met with his builder, and as a result, tried to come up with a plan that would still allow him to have the house complete in terms of being tight to the weather, and allow then during the summer only interior construction. He believes that the modification that I've passed out, which is a modification of our request, does that. So rather than the proposal to strike 3A, we are simply looking for 3A to be modified to allow 3 items. First item is to install what he believes will be the remaining windows, principally just on the rear of the house as of June 30th, including rear sliders, which were specialty ordered, and then finish remaining roofing and sidewall to make it tight to the weather. He believes that this would not exceed 10 working days. In fact, he's willing to obviously live with that as an outside limit. He believes it may be able to be done less than that, but I'll let him speak to you directly with respect to that. Item 2, install remaining roof siding and windows on the garage to make that tight to the weather as well. That again would not exceed 10 working days and would run concurrent and be required to run concurrent with the house 10 days. So it's not 10 days on and after that, it's the same 10 days. And then finally, what he had discussed with his neighbors when they originally, the 3 neighbors that abut, when they originally agreed to strike the no exterior construction condition, he would grade the site and hydroseed it so that they wouldn't have the dust for the summer, and there'd be some semblance of a lawn. And it is hydroseeding was the word that I couldn't get my arms around when I said astroturf at the beginning. So that's the correction. So it's a simple request. It's a request based on Mr. Oppenheim's construction schedule, which he'll address here briefly in just a moment. But it was also one that was based on planning with his immediate abutters. He's discussed everything with them from day one. And I think at this point, Mr. Chairman, if I could have him briefly address items 1, 2, and 3 and his schedule, he can probably put it in better perspective than I did. I should have mentioned item 3, it's 5 days, 5 working days. That's the outside limit to get that, grade the site, get it hydroseeded. It may take less than that. So the maximum time that he could work after June 30th, if you allowed all three items, would be 15 days. Mr. Oppenheim.
Hi, David Oppenheim. I'm president of Chatfield Company. When we were here in December and you granted us the permits, quite frankly, I never anticipated coming back with this type of a problem. I've been involved with building for years, and it's never taken this long to build something of this size. It's not a huge house. It's a lot of detail, et cetera. We had anticipated starting in January. We're not able to for several reasons. We had the plans revised and revised again slightly by shrinking the house approximately 60 square feet. We, in discussions and understanding exactly what the building inspector requires, which is clear, we wanted to make sure we had enough, we weren't going to run into coverage things for corner boards, et cetera, so I think we shrunk the house by about 60 square feet. We lowered the pitch from 11 to 10.5 to give us, so there was no grade plane issues. This all involved revising the plans to some degree. We had to have recertification of structural things. I'm not going to, and the engineer was no longer available, so we had somebody else. But we had the plans done, and we did not get started till mid-March. We started framing in April. We've been lucky with weather. We had 1 week and a half loss of time due to COVID when we lost our entire crew. But they've made great progress. I think the house is being well received. A couple things just to address concerns of overall neighborhoods. I've met with all of our immediate neighbors, the abutters. They were given the cell phone number of the builder and myself. If there's any problems, call us immediately. We've never received a call. In fact, we've received compliments on how the site is handled. There's no radios on site. There's no boom boxes or anything like that. The neighbors two of the neighbors have offered to let us use their property if we needed excess parking. We've never needed it. All construction parking has been handled on the site. So we're well along. We've had supply problems, which I'm not going to bore you with. I'm sure you hear about it all the time. But we are we're in good shape now. The only thing that is going to come last is, if you remember, there was a bump out, and I'm sorry I didn't have something to put up on the screen. On the back, there was an 8-foot deep by about 20-foot wide bump out with large atrium windows. Those are special ordered. They were ordered at the same time in March, and everything else has come except for those, and we are told we will receive those. Shepley should get those around the 29th. They're pretty certain they will have those on the 29th of June. The only other problem we had is 2 windows came wrong, but they're regular double hungs, and that doesn't pose much of a problem. So, as Mr. Ford said, I would have liked to be able to continue on and finish the outside, but once I realized that concerns do go beyond just the immediate neighbors, we revised it as Mr. Ford. I won't reiterate what he's always explained. So I thought I'd just give you a rough schedule, subject to weather conditions, obviously. We just dug, and they're forming right now for the garage and the porch pour. Those will be completed by next week. And so basically on the week of 5/28 next week, foundations for the porch and garage will be completed. On the week of June 5th, we expect to backfill and start the porch construction, which we expect to take 4 or 5 days. It's a very beautiful outside porch. The week of June 12th, we expect to finish the porch, the house trim. We will start the roof and sidewall and start framing the garage. On the week of the 19th, the sliders we are missing, not the specialty windows, but the other 2 sliders that go in the house will be delivered to us, and those can go in, and we will continue roofing and sidewall the main house and continue also framing the garage at that point. And then the week of the 26th, the last week before we go to our non-stop, not be able to work anymore, we will finish the sidewall except for the rear bump out. The specialty order windows are due in, as I said, on the 29th. Maybe we'll get them on the 30th, but I doubt it. So the most logical thing would be to have them delivered after the 4th of July, which would be the 5th. I think that's a Wednesday. Oh, perfect. Isn't that great? Thank you. And so the only thing left to complete on the main house will be, is that a pointer thing here? Well, the bump out's that center section.
I was going to say Riley took it, but he didn't show up today, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, how do I do this? Oh, there we go. It's just, this is the only side, these are the specialty windows. There's two on the side, and there's a specialty slider. This is the only area that will need to be completed on the main house, which is item number 1 on our request. And
That's in the rear.
and that's in the rear of the building. It doesn't face the street. The only people that'll know about it will be the Kennedys, who are directly behind us, and the Clarks probably will know. Fishers are way over on the other side of the fancy driveway that leads into the house behind us. So this house will be better for everybody if it's tight to weather, so we would like permission to probably have the windows, assuming they come in, which we're being told this time they really will come in. We'd like to be able to go in probably on the 5th, hopefully on the 5th, get the windows in. It'll take probably 2 to 3 days to get the windows in and trimmed. There's a lot of beautiful trim on the house. And it will take probably another 2 to 3 days to sidewall this section, depending on scheduling. The reason I think the actual work period that's going to be required to complete all this is 5 to 6 days. I just can't tell you that if we get the windows in by that Friday, that we'll have the shingler there on Monday. There's too much going on. They'll get there as fast as they can. Everybody's aware of this. Everybody's prepared to come back. We're foregoing doing some of the interior petitions right now because we want to get the outside done. The good news is once the foundation is finished next week, that'll be the last of cement trucks. We will forego any cement trucks until the fall, in September. So there'll be no more really heavy equipment. The only thing that's required for this is the lull that lifts things up and down, and that doesn't really make any noise. There'll be less and less people on site as we go forward. And I think, like I said, by the time the end of June comes, the only thing really of consequence is this. This garage should be framed. And if it is, and the crew is there, we would like to be able to roof this and continue working on this, assuming the millwork comes. If not, we would be prepared to just roof it and worry about things like that. And as far as the landscaping request number 3, that was really something that I wanted to do basically because of the neighbors. They've been great. There's been no problems, and I just thought it would be better for them. They agreed, and if you would allow us to do that, that would be great. And that's entirely up to you. Happy to answer any questions.
All done?
Yep.
All done.
Okay, great.
Happy to take questions.
Okay. Is there anyone here on Microsoft that would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, indicate now you'd like to join the meeting.
Ms. Timpson?
Oh, thank you. I didn't see
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We did not receive notice of this change, and there are a lot of us who did receive the first notice of this meeting. This is a new way of handling things that we don't know until, and if we don't come to the meeting or listen to it, we don't know about it. Is that acceptable to your board, number one? I live at 396 Stage Harbor with my husband, Jeffrey Fugelstadt. I have a letter from a neighbor across the street who couldn't be here for medical reasons. I don't know how to go about this, except that it sounds, I wrote something, but it's not entirely appropriate at this point. This particular site, due to an overbuilt, grandfathered zoning situation, has very little parking space for contractor and
Excuse me,
delivery.
is this in favor?
We are totally opposed.
Well, apparently you weren't listening when I said this is for people in favor.
I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I see no one to speak in favor.
Okay, now I read the correspondence. This is dated May 22nd. It is from Julie McCaffrey, Secretary of the Cocker Rise Association. which includes Barbara Hawes, the McCaffreys, Lackalades, McGrath, Crosby, Bainbridge roads. As a majority of residents of the Crocker Rise Association contacted as an abutter in this proceeding, we object to the request to remove condition number 3A, which prohibits exterior construction between June 30th and Labor Day. The rationale for our objection is the construction noise. Currently, the on-site construction begins at 7 a.m. on many mornings, and its sound can be loud and disturbing. Though we realize the special permits condition number 3C states limitation of construction to 8 a.m. to 5, the lack of mechanisms in place to report and monitor compliance are the basis for our objection to the request to remove condition number 3A. We haven't cited the obvious concern for the safety of walkers and runners, since we assume that the ZBA will consider safety foremost in assessing the impact of a potential exemption to the special permit now in place. Then we have a note. This is from Sophia Guerrero and William Kennedy. And they write on May 19th, we support, this is to David, we support your development timeline revisions as outlined in your email. Then we have an email. This is from Marty Bach and Beth McDermott. They're at 376 Stage Harbor. They write on May 18th. We are parties in interest as the owners of the property at 376. The applicant has requested removal of the condition. We respectfully request that the board deny this request. The house at issue is on a small lot, and the houses in the neighborhood are close together. It will be extremely noisy for the neighbors if this request is granted. The developer and builder were well aware of this condition when they began the project. Then we have an email. This is from Michael Parrish, 372 Stage Harbor Road. On May 12th, I am one of the owners of 372 and object to the removal of condition number 3A. The reason for my objection is the added noise and traffic during the summer months. It is my understanding that other construction in the neighborhood had to conform to this or very similar conditions. I don't understand why this builder should get special consideration. Then Stephen and Elizabeth Clark, 368 Stage Harbor Road, right. And this again was written to David, and we forward to Sarah. Thanks. No, we are comfortable with your request for exterior construction as described below, and would be happy for you to share this view with the Board of Appeals. We are not planning to attend the meeting. Please feel free to reach us if there is anything additional we need to discuss, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Chatham soon. And then this is May 11th from Jeff Fisher, who's at 330 Stage Harbor Road. He writes, David, we absolutely support your idea. I'm sure it's going to look great. That's the extent of the correspondence. Now, I'll ask for anyone either here or on Microsoft who wishes to speak either against or has a specific question. Yes.
Here I am again.
Okay.
Well, then, I do ask the question, is it legal? Is it part of the normal process and procedure to accept a change without notifying all the abutters?
Yes, it is. In fact, we get, unfortunately, plans revised the day of our meeting. It's very annoying. It's very annoying.
Yeah.
But yes, it is acceptable.
Okay. I'm just going to read what I have here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ann Timpson. We oppose the request for summer exterior construction at Mr. Oppenheim's project site on Stage Harbor Road. We have had numerous demolitions and new home constructions on our street. In every case, the contractors and/or developers adhered to the sensible regulations that your board crafted to keep public safety and public quality of life in mind during our busy summer tourist months. These 3 months provide this town with the needed revenue that keeps it afloat year after year. This particular site, due to an overbuilt, grandfathered zoning situation, has very little parking space for contractor and delivery trucks. In most instances, trucks are backed onto the property, resulting in sharp right-angled turns into Stage Harbor Road, temporarily blocking traffic in both directions. In the dead of winter, traffic is light, but in summer, traffic increases, and we have constant pedestrian walkers and cyclists. For public safety alone, we request a no exterior construction. However, the noise factor, which we have patiently endured for months, caused by the constant all-day truck rear backing alarms, is unpleasant. At best, and it is an all-day noise which is hard to ignore if one chooses to be outside. The repetitive beep, beep, beep is tiresome at best, and it does start at 7 or 7:30, not at 8 o'clock. We've put up with it. We are happy that the construction is moving forward. I am concerned that you will be building at a time when we are very busy, right before the 4th of July, and during that week and several weeks. I just think that the unknowns are too great, and this public safety issue is too great. We have a very busy street, particularly in that 2-week span where you're choosing to continue. I can understand getting the windows in. I'm an architect's daughter. I totally get it. But I think the public safety issue and the noise issue is major, and a lot of this could be done in September, or even the last week of August when everybody leaves, because school starts earlier. So much as I understand the situation, this is a house built on spec. It's not a family that can't get it done in time to be there this summer. And I respectfully still oppose regardless, and I thank you for considering these other exceptions. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here? The gentleman in the back. You'll be next. Gentleman in the back. And for those that don't know, the reason we run the timer up there is we limit speakers to 5 minutes. So that's why that's run.
Jeff Fugelstad, 396 Stage Harbor. I reiterate what Ms. Timpson said about the July 4th weekend. This is a street that promotes through the various town committees a pathway for bicyclers, walkers with babies, etc. The other thing, I've built houses myself. There's no reason why the exterior cannot be shingled, the roof shingled, the exterior shingled, with boards put up where there aren't any windows. That's a backward view. Most of the windows that we see right now are around the house, and it is enclosed. So I would suggest that interior work be done in the summer. Perhaps some of the exterior work could be done on a couple of days later in July, when they did receive the windows, assuming they're on time. Those are my only comments. I think it's a time of year where consideration should be given to the zoning board's original plan to have no building exterior-wise between June 30th and Labor Day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg McCaffrey from Inlet Road, part of the Cracker Rise Association. Just want to reinforce what was in our letter and also mention that if you're going to consider some sort of a 1 or 2 week extra week, obviously the week of July 4th should be off the table. To consider it then, considering Stage Harbor and the loop there resembles more of like the Boston Marathon during that week than anything else, I think that would be crazy. Again, if there's any way we can try to keep the reason why you put 3A in there in the first place, keep that alive and real, we would certainly hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Is there anybody on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak?
There is not.
Okay.
May I respond?
Mr. Oppenheim?
The concern about 4th of July, I completely agree with, which is why if the windows were able to get to us on the 30th, we wouldn't even want to attempt to put them in. So if you are inclined to allow us to get the rear windows in and get the place tight to weather, and you wanted to restrict it to a week later or something like that, that may work even better for everybody. But the 4th of July, I wouldn't even argue the point. The previous two speakers said if there's going to be anything to consider that, the two previous speakers talked about the windows being done at a different time. When the windows come in, we just want to put them in, get them in, trim them, and tighten the place up so that it's tight to weather. It's a lot of house there. And I do want to say the one thing that was that there is no time frame on this. We're not building this for a client. We're not in any hurry. I just want to get this house, which is quite beautiful, tight to weather so it's protected from the elements. If the garage doesn't get done, that's fine, but the house itself needs to be protected, and we're just trying to protect the investment and the neighborhood. And then the last thing, the only thing I do want to respond to is, again, we've had a lot of people working there, and at no time have we ever had to park any vehicle on any lot other than our own. Thank you.
So you would accept, in addition to this, that no work begin before July 10th? That would be the Monday after?
Yeah, no, if the board, I mean, I think, personally, I think July 4th ends and the 4th people go back to work. I'd like to get it done as quickly as possible, but if this board felt July 10th was better, we could certainly live with that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, just questioning myself, that's all. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention, the 8 o'clock start is triggered on June 30th. The town bylaw is 7 o'clock. And so we haven't been violating the condition. I just wanted the board to be aware of that by starting at 7 or 7:30.
Right.
Yes, and our crew has actually wanted to start earlier, and we've told them, no, we have to abide by the town bylaws. So throughout this winter, we've never started before 7. Usually no equipment's going before 7:30. And we've even limited weekends to very short days, so.
Okay, all right. Okay, questions from the board? Randy?
Thank you. Let's see. As far as the landscaping, you can do that all year round, right? We don't have did we say you couldn't landscape?
We understand that landscaping is exterior construction and is not permitted.
Okay,
So that is,
so that's a condition.
yes, it is.
Landscaping.
Yeah, no,
Even though it says
no,
construction, my belief is it's customary that landscaping is construction.
Mowing the
Even
lawn,
though everybody else can do landscaping all year round.
so you can mow the lawn and leaf blow all you want, but you
that's
can't
it.
landscape.
Only, that's it.
Say again?
That's it, what he said. But you can mow your lawn, but you can't do any construction.
But
The leaf-
everybody else can. though.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Jenny?
Mr. Ford, you answered my question about the timing and of 8 to 5 or 7 to 4, so thank you. Mr. Oppenheim, you mentioned that you have managed successfully the parking situation with your cars. You negotiated a lot of a neighbor or something, but you have accommodated the busyness of Stage Harbor Road.
There has never
in some
been a
way.
car parked anyplace except on the lot that we're working on.
Okay.
Even though our neighbors have offered, when they're not there, to let us use it, we have not needed to do that. And as we go forward, there will be less cars.
Okay, yeah, no, I caught you said that. But because of the busyness of the coming months, do you still expect to be able to have that same access?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No problem whatsoever.
Okay.
Particularly where we're only seeking a few days.
We're only
In that
talking about-
period, we're not seeking the waiver of,
We're not seeking the waiver of the exterior construction. So basically, by the end of next week, once the foundations are poured for the garage and the porch, that's the end of cement trucks and the heavy equipment coming in. They'll backfill it, and then basically it's just, we're into lighter construction, if you will, which is the porch, sidewall, roofing, and things like that.
And then, I think, Mr. Ford, you said 1 and 2 would not exceed 10 days.
That's correct.
Concurrent, and those projects would be
They-
going on
they'd run
concurrently?
concurrent.
Okay, maximum of 10 days, may
That's
not even
correct.
be 10 days.
Correct.
And then number 3 would happen
After.
after that.
Right.
And it would be a maximum of 5 days.
That's right. And that's the grading and then the hydro seeding. That's,
Only, you're not talking about plants and shrubs and trees?
No.
No, it's just really to stabilize the site, and make it look
Exactly,
more
and
presentable.
I think that's actually a good thing to do. I agree with you. I think for dust control.
It was my intent to do that. We would eventually landscape out of some of that with
Right.
plantings and things,
Would-
but we thought it would make it a much more attractive site for the town and for our neighbors for the summer.
Yeah, personally, I agree with that, but does it take 5 days to hydro seed? It's not a.
Well, no, we
big-
have to, because we'd have to loam, we have to do the final grading, get the
Okay.
grade plane exactly where it needs to be, so it has to be staked and put the loam down in the proper places, et cetera. I mean, it may not take 5 days.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
I just wanted to be clear that it was just that we were.
No, that's all we're
talking
trying to
about
do,
with
and then,
respect to landscaping.
because
Yeah,
it's,
'cause
you
I
know,
think-
it's sand right now, and it's.
Well, what it sounds to me like you're trying to do is do what's really necessary, and that's what I'm trying to determine versus some elective things.
If that part is not approved, you will save me a lot of money, but I won't be doing what I think is best for the neighbors.
Right, yeah. And then it sounded like you were okay with taking July 4th off the table?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's a good
Yeah,
suggestion
that makes
by the
sense.
neighbor. That's all I have, thank you.
Dave Veach.
Excuse me, I have no questions at this time, Dave.
Buck.
So I have a question for Mr. Briggs. And that is, if permitted, how would community development be set up to monitor compliance as far as the dates of, where they exceeded the 5 days or the 10 days, or how are you going to keep track of that?
We usually keep track of that through complaints from neighbors, but
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I should have, the motion that we've suggested says, as a requirement, petitioner would be required to notify the building commissioner at the start of the accepted work and the completion of the accepted work. So I thought, given everything you've got going on in your office, we would take it upon ourselves as a condition to call when it started and call when it was completed, so they could check it off.
we're out on inspections every day, so it's not a problem to take a drive-by and just verify if it gets approved.
Hi, I have a question regarding getting the house weather tight. Once it's weather tight and you hydro seed, will you have workers there working on site interior?
There will be they'll be doing some plumbing and some interior petitions, but not a lot of work during the summer. It would be primarily, we'll finish up the interior petitions, it's probably a few days, and then the plumbers will start their work, which will take a long time.
And there will be vans and trucks parked?
Probably 2 or 3 vehicles at most on a given day.
Will you have a driveway by that point?
Yes, the plan, if we're allowed to do the landscape portion, the hydro seeding, it would be my intent, assuming the landscaping took, and I had planned to have a well drilled so we would be able to irrigate, and so it would tend to grow. We would probably put a gravel driveway and either eliminate or minimize the amount of chain link security fencings out there to make it have a better appearance. If we don't landscape, or if it doesn't take as well, the security fencing would still be there, but all this parking would still be on site without any problem whatsoever.
So if you didn't hydro seed, you would have more parking?
No, not really. We'll have plenty of parking because the hydro seeding would be primarily in the back and in front of the porch, where the big vehicles are now, which won't be there. But you're talking about, right now, we have these very large vehicles with battery setups and things like, all of that won't be there. You're talking about small, like a Whiteley van, for example, or an electrician's van, and there's easily parking for 4 or 5 vehicles without any problem whatsoever.
And that work's already permitted.
And that's
Interior
permitted.
work is
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
I was more concerned about parking
No, it'll
and traffic.
it'll be like people coming to your house and doing work at your house.
Okay.
Paul? One question I have is, when we talk about 10 or 15 days, we're not specifying consecutive days. What's the time frame here.
concurrent.
If,
Well, we would be, good question, and I asked David that, and I should have put that in this motion. Not only is it 10 maximum days, but consecutive days. We would be willing to live with consecutive days.
so we're talking 10 consecutive days, and by days here, you're talking about working days?
Working days.
So how does the weather affect that?
It's barring some crazy storm that we don't anticipate. I'm assuming normal weather, we'll lose a few. The actual work for, let's say, the windows on the rear bump out, the installation of the windows and trimming will take 2.5 to 3 days. The shingling itself will take probably 2 days. So in the consecutive days, I'm allowing, there could be a day where we lose a day for weather. So we have 10 days to do what I consider 6 days' work.
We built a bad weather day in there.
Is there a time frame that we can say to neighbors, it'll be done by this time? In terms of the 15 days?
It will be done within 10 days of the date we start. So if we can start on the 10th and the windows are there, we'll be done 10 days after that.
We'll be done the 20th.
If the windows, for some reason, and you know, we're not expecting it, but it's strange out there in supply. If the windows weren't available, let's say until the 15th of July, we wouldn't start until the 15th, and we'd be finished 10 days after that.
I think what Mr. Semple is searching for, though, is a date certain, that if relief is granted, there's a date certain in it, I think is where he's going to.
That's what was coming to my mind.
No,
If we started on the 10th and have 10 working days, we've got 1 weekend in there.
Yeah, so it would be 10 plus a weekend. I would
can't
be
work
fine
on
with that.
weekends.
But I'd like it to be 10 days from the start. And the only reason I'm saying that is if the windows, if we get disappointed again, they were supposed to be here a month ago. We are told by Shepley that we're getting them. They will have them on the 29th. So I'm basing it on that. But if for some reason they said to us, no, we're not getting them until the 10th, we won't have them till the 12th or the 13th. So I would be very comfortable. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable saying it would be by roughly the 22nd or 23rd of July, but I'd rather, and I think it would accomplish the same thing, we're not going to do anything until the windows come. So from the date we notify Jay's office, it's 10 working days after that.
Well, the thing that's making me a little uncomfortable here is I feel as if we're writing this on the fly, and it's not real clear to me where we're going to end up here.
Basically, we're going to stop work on the 30th, wherever
I'm
we're
wondering
at.
if you can modify your proposal so that it is a little clearer with respect to what's going to be done around July 4th or the week of July 4th, and whether we're talking consecutive or non-consecutive days, and is there a time frame when we can consider for neighbors it will be done. These conditions will be taken care of by whatever the date is, so that we have some outside time frame that they can then feel somewhat comfortable with, at least from then on to the end of our restriction.
Agreed. Agreed.
Can I make a suggestion that you might consider? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that what would give us direction is if the board seeks to impose no work until at least the 10th. If that's the case, then we could modify this and give you back something, just like you're saying, with a date certain, whether it's July 23rd, if we started the 10th, that's got 1 weekend in it, and that would be the outside date. So we call the building inspector, he knows it's going to happen on the 10th, we get 10 working days, and it's over. Now, there's 5 days for landscaping, but I haven't heard where the board is on that yet, so I certainly could add that with the date certain. That would be on and after if you allowed that.
And I would also, yeah, I mean, that's the best way for us to do it, so that basically nothing happens. We're going to stop work on the 30th of June and not do any more work till the windows come in. So once we get notice, and we're not going to do anything until the 10th. So if Shepley says, yes, we got the windows, we're going to schedule those windows to come in on, I guess it's the date is the 10th, and have them deliver it to us, and then we would be done 10 working days no more than 10 working days after that. If they told us they can't deliver us the windows to us until the 13th, we would notify the building inspector. We're going to start on the 13th, and our end date would be 10 working days after that. I don't, again, we're pretty confident they're coming. It's just, there's things that are just strange. But I think that gives you the end date in the sense, I mean, certainly if you wanted to say there can be no work past July 31st, which gives us the leeway, I don't have a problem with that. I think it'll be done well before. We expect to have the windows and be starting on the 10th, but we won't know that they're actually there until the 29th.
I think I'd like to hear what the other members of the board have to say with respect to those questions.
All right, well, then we should go into deliberations.
All right, I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
No. No. Go ahead.
I approve.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Okay, well, I'll start. I usually go last, but I'll start. How's that? I don't like the idea of setting a specific date beyond you can't start until after July 10th. I don't like the idea of, how does he know when they're going to be delivered? I mean, it's nice to have faith in Shepley and all that, but how many times have you been disappointed? I mean, it doesn't, to me, we don't want them coming back here and saying, we're really sorry, but it didn't happen. So I hear what you say, Paul, but I'm not upset with the idea of you can't start until July 10th. And I think Mr. Oppenheim just threw out on the table, look, if he hasn't started by the end of July, then nothing. Is that what you said?
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay. I mean, that to me would be okay. It gives them a little bit of room to do it. As far as the three conditions, I have no problem with 1 and 2 and the business of, what's going on. But I cannot agree to the landscaping. To me, that's a separate subject from, we're talking about making the house tight and all that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, the real noise is, around my house anyway, it's the landscapers. And I know that's leaf blowers and all that, but pushing dirt around, dumping it, the people concerned about traffic. I don't want to see a dump truck rolling down there if we can't stop it, or a bulldozer to push it around. And I think Mr. Oppenheim admitted maybe we're going to save him a couple of bucks. Well, okay, but at least we tried, or he tried. But I would not want to approve number 3, but the rest of it can't start until July 10th. The way Mr. Ford wrote this out, they're going to notify Jay, and if you haven't started by July 31st, boom, it's off the table until after Labor Day. That's how I feel. Randy?
What I can't get away from is thinking about how if you didn't have to get a special permit, you wouldn't have any of these concerns. And that is just fundamentally not fair for people that have to come in for a special permit or for a variance, and then they're saddled with conditions. Where everybody else, we have a house near where I live that they've been working on for maybe 3-4 years, and he didn't need a special permit, and he works wherever he wants. And so, as much as we don't set precedents supposedly, we have to be fair. And I think fundamental fairness means that people should be able to work on their property and not be able to do that just because they had to get a special permit. So I'm happy with whatever you're happy with.
Jenny?
So I have 2 concerns and a comment. The concerns were that, so I wasn't here in November hearing when you were here, but I did watch it. And, the conditions were placed, and that's the standard, they're placed for a reason, and that's the standard practice that, to Randy's point, everyone adheres to. So I struggle a little bit with that. And the reason for that is the consideration for neighbors. And I remember saying, well, let's talk to a neighbor. He's right here. It was Buck. That was what was happening in November. And also traffic and safety. But those are sort of my two concerns. And then so we're today making an exception and so it feels sort of like, well, why? But I feel like, and this is my comment, I feel like you have taken steps to accommodate the goal of expediting the project. You want it expedited. You're not trying to drag it out. That meeting was 7 months ago, that hearing. And a lot of things come up. We all know that. We all are neighbors to construction or doing our own home projects, so we understand it's impossible to predict these kinds of things that you're encountering. So as someone, and I will say in fairness, I've been living across the street from a construction zone for over 2 years. So I like the hydro seeding because I don't have to have the windows cleaned twice a year. But what was interesting is our neighbors were sensing this agitation in our neighborhood because their project was taking so long. And so they unilaterally said, you know, we're not going to do construction during the whole summer. This was last summer. And the neighbors, ourselves included, were surprisingly like, oh my God, just finish it. Like, we didn't actually want the reprieve. Now, we don't live on Stage Harbor Road, not a busy street, so we didn't have those considerations. But I am sort of leaning towards the idea of, I appreciate the neighbors are here. I think that if we could find some accommodation, which it sounds like, Paul, you were working towards, and Dave, you were suggesting, it's important to make it tight to the weather. Maybe the landscaping isn't, or the hydro seeding isn't as important, but if we could all flex and just find a way for you to get it finished as soon as possible and keep the integrity of the property that you're working on. It's a big investment for you and for the neighborhood. That's kind of where I was leaning.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm here from Randy and also from Ginny. It helps to reinforce for me that this, these situations with respect to these conditions, I kind of miss having Megan here to help. So she kind of sided with me more frequently on this. But, it's a tough question, and it's tough for each of us individually, and to know and to be able to assess when to try to apply these and when not to, knowing full well, as Randy said, if someone doesn't have to come before us, they can work, they're unrestricted, and they're not, and also, as we all know, and what Ginny just said is so true. I mean, there's a finite amount of time that it takes to complete a project like this, and so for any delays that we impose, that is going to extend the overall timeline for the construction project. And so we have to try to balance all of that, and now we're hearing from, I think we've probably almost everyone in Chatham by now has lived near a construction site, and usually for multiple years and multiple instances, because it's part of the deal, and it's disruptive, and it's not, and we're just trying to balance and find fairness and balance all the interests and fairness. And certainly in this day and age, trying to do a construction project in a timely fashion has all kinds of further complications that weren't in place before COVID and supply chain things and all of that. So all of that leads me to try to be more liberal in accommodating this. I'm pretty impressed with the presentation that's been made and what they're asking of us. They're not looking, they're looking to try to get the house tight to the weather, which makes a great deal of sense, and also to secure the landscaping so they can take the fencing down and get the dust down. I mean, to me, those are very legitimate requests that were going to serve everyone's interests. and do it well. And I'm inclined to give them what they've asked for. I don't think they're asking for too much. And I will agree with, so if we're setting that, no work until the 10th, and then from then, once he gets the windows, 10 working days, to me, that sounds like a reasonable, more than reasonable proposal on their part. So I will support it.
Well, I could support this if the board decided to stop imposing conditions. Randy's just about hit the nail on the head. Conforming lots get to work all the time. You're getting ready to set precedents, and I know, and I've mentioned this a million times, there is no precedent, but my gut feeling is if you approve this, you're going to open the doors to every home builder in Chatham to start coming in here and having something. Now, maybe they'll start with just getting their toe in the water. Maybe it won't be to wipe out the conditions, but you're asking for more of, well, how do we decide between this one and that one, like Mr. Veach was suggesting. I won't be here to suffer through it, I can tell you that. But I'm sharing with you I do have a few years of experience on my back and scars to show. It's a bad idea to start trying to weigh, okay, this attorney and this taxpayer, this is aces. But now you're going to be getting into gray, and you're going to be getting into grayer, and you're going to be actually making a decision based on the integrity of the applicant. I think you're going, and not to mention that one of the neighbors mentioned that you don't need the windows to make it weather tight. They sell plywood by the sheet all day long, and there's other ways to do it. And to deny the neighbors that wrote letters or came here, you might as well tell them that doesn't mean anything. I'm just looking at what you're going to be doing to yourselves going forward. I can't support it.
Lee?
Well,
I'll be gone.
no, I could totally understand the combination approach, wanting to get it weather tight. It allows you to work interior, which would finish the project earlier, hopefully. But I understand Buck's concern with people coming in and asking to waive these conditions going forward, and that's a tough one. I'm not voting today, but I would support these conditions.
Paul?
Well, obviously, we have a conflict here in terms of trying to get this thing resolved, and we've always had these conflicts. I'm mindful of one that we had, I think, a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that, on Seaside Avenue, where we refused to modify the conditions and required that the work stop. And we did that on the basis of neighbors and others who were complaining about the pace at which construction was going forward. So I'm mindful of that. I'm not sure that we're going to hit that same situation here. But at the same time, I'm still uncomfortable because I don't know exactly how the applicant wants to modify this request as it stands now. What are the changes that you would make to this, Mike, that would then satisfy your client?
As I understand, and listening intently to the board as they've gone around the loop here, the changes would be that none of items 1, 2, I don't know whether there are votes for 3 yet, so let's say 1 and 2, could start after June 30th until July 10th. And then they'd only start July 10th if we called the building commissioner, as I've suggested here as a requirement, when it starts and completion for accepted work. So if we didn't have the windows, we wouldn't be calling him on July 10th. we'd be calling him whenever those windows are in. And from whenever that call is made, we have the windows, we're starting our 10-day exception. 10 working days after that, it would be complete. I would also revise it through what the chair indicated, which was what my client has agreed to, that if the windows aren't in by July 31st, and we've never made the call to the building commissioner, then the exception expires, and we simply have to wait until after Labor Day.
And with respect to the landscaping, at this point, your proposal still goes as not to exceed 5 working days?
That's correct.
And again, that would be at such time as when?
That's when 1 and 2 are complete. If the board voted 1 and 2, that 10-day period, or such earlier time as that 10-day period ended, because as Mr. Oppenheim indicated, he's built, maybe a rain day into that 10 days because he thinks it's more like 6 days to get that work done, 6.5. So whenever that's done, and we call the building inspector and say 1 and 2 is done, then 3 starts, and you have 5 consecutive days, and it's gone.
And are you saying that the end date is still July 31st, and that you're dealing with?
Yes, we are. I've just asked him.
So does that mean that your start date is, the last start date is 10 days before that? The
10 working
21st?
days. Yes, I'm fine with the 10 working days. So it'd be 10 working days, whatever that, plus a weekend, so whatever that comes out to calendar-wise.
So Mr. Semple's question is, which is a good one, is the last start date then 10 days before July 31st?
That's fine.
That would be July 18th.
That would be
Yes.
July 18th.
Yes.
We're fine with that.
July 18?
Yes.
Yeah,
So if we can't start by July 18th, we're done until the fall.
We're done, right.
Okay, I think that answers my questions.
so the only question that's still out there is, well, I guess what we would do, I don't want to drag this out, but we need to decide how everybody feels about 1, 2, and 3 before you make a final motion. So I guess I'll just take it 1, 2, 3, and I'll have a little quick straw vote here. How many in favor of number 1? How many in favor of number 2? And how many in favor of number 3? Well, that would, well, so Buck and I would,
I get it.
that'd be a
That's
no,
Okay.
because this is, 2 you lose. So,
And may I make a comment?
go ahead.
Assuming 3 were not approved, we would certainly, once we are completed with the outside, the shingling and the windows, we will make sure the site is as clean. And they rake the site every weekend. And so we'll keep it as neat as possible, no matter what.
Okay, well, thank you. All right. So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like the motion would be, Paul, that what you read here, just read 1 and 2, and with the caveat, read the whole sentence that, the 10 working day business petitioner will be required. No work would commence before July 10th, and the last start date would be July 18th.
I think so. Okay, I will move to approve the application as follows, that after July 10th, the petitioner will notify the building commissioner in writing that the remaining windows, doors, roofing, and siding shall commence, and such work shall not exceed 10 consecutive working days, should work not begin by July 18, no work would be allowed until after Labor Day with respect to those issues.
And I think you need to describe that work is just items 1 and 2.
Just items 1 and 2. That's correct. That's the motion.
Sounds good to me.
Dave Veach seconds.
Am I voting now? No.
Well, you had to wait for me to ask you.
Paul votes yes.
Randy votes yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, Paul, what do you think about asking for permission to leave?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We need to vote by everybody.
Buck approves.
I approve.
All approves?
I approve.
Randy approves.
Ginny approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And the official time is?
5:48.
Okay. Phew.